The Foreign Secretary joins the race for the Conservative leadership.
A very good morning. It's 6 o'clock on Monday, the 11th of July. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Rosie Wright. Here's what's leading the news this morning.
The Foreign Secretary, Liz Truss, has joined 10 other candidates in the race to become the next Conservative leader and Prime Minister. She launched her bid with a promise to cut taxes from day one.
The former Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, has denied claims that he's in contact with Dominic Cummings after the former Number 10 advisor launched a series of attacks on the Tory leadership candidates over the weekend. Well, Boris Johnson ally Nadine Dorries accused Sunak of working with Cummings for a long time.
And Novak Djokovic has beaten Australia's Nick Kyrgios to win his fourth consecutive men's singles title at Wimbledon. Post-match, Kyrgios hailed his opponent as a tennis god.
Well, please join in with the discussion this morning, particularly what you make of the people, the runners, the riders to be the next Prime Minister. You can email us gbviews@gbnews.uk or drop us a tweet at gbnews.
Or you can subscribe to the GB News channel. That is on YouTube. Get all the latest on the big stories that hopefully everybody is or will be talking about. Here we are, GB News, the People's Channel. So let's get underway this Monday morning, and our top story is that the Foreign Secretary, Liz Truss, has entered the race to become the next Prime Minister.
Well, she enters a field that now includes 11 candidates, including the former Health Secretary, Jeremy Hunt, the Transport Secretary, Grant Shapps, and her chief rival, the former Chancellor, Rishi Sunak.
She launched her bid writing in the Telegraph newspaper that it was time to get back to Conservative values and promised to cut taxes from the first day.
Well, with us now to find out more is Dan Fulvey, Daily Express political correspondent, and also Sam Rossbottom, a political betting expert at Betfair. Thank you very much for both of you being here. Sam, let's start with you. Odds. Who looks at this point to be leading that runners and riders race? Because at this point, still, there could be more candidates to say, I'll throw my hat into the ring too.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It is still early days in that sense. However, we are seeing a big trend with the punters. Over a third of the money over on the Betfair exchange market has been for the former Chancellor, Rishi Sunak. He is the favourite. He's been backed into 2-1. Over £650,000 has been traded, a third of that for him. So very popular selection with the punters.
Why would that be, Dan? Why do you think he is the favourite as it stands? Certainly, I mean, it's early days yet, but bearing in mind the animosity, the obvious divide there was between him and Boris Johnson, and this is a man who, in terms of running the economy, is saying, look, I can't cut taxes, I don't want to cut taxes, but everybody else is saying, cut taxes.
I think Rishi Sunak has the advantage that he's a known face. Thanks to the pandemic, he built up a great big media profile and a lot of popularity with things such as the furlough scheme. When it comes to taxes, a lot of that is still tainted with Boris Johnson currently, even though he was the Chancellor. You're right, he is saying that if he becomes Prime Minister, he won't change that course. Now, it's interesting to see what that does in the days and weeks ahead as this contest plays out, but he's hoping it will show that he's sensible, pragmatic, and that actually that he's not going to just move as members want him to, but actually go with what is the best interest of the country. And he's hoping that that message will make him look like he is the statesman who is doing the best interest of the country.
Sam, do you get any indication? I mean, these candidates are talking about cutting taxes or raising taxes. Do you get any indication from the electorate as to what they want, what is going to be popular?
I think when we look at what could potentially be the topics for this leadership race, I think certainly tax is going to be on there, which we've heard about. I think as well defence, national security, the situation in Ukraine, which is why we've seen backing for Penny Mordaunt, I feel. She's been a firm favourite for quite some time. She's in there at 7-2 currently. And also Foreign Secretary Liz Truss, another popular selection. Her odds being slashed since her announcement overnight that she will be standing. She was around 11-1 on Thursday when Boris Johnson announced his resignation. She's now been backed into 5-1, so a bit of movement for her as well. But I think there's going to be a number of talking points, and I think the candidates that are up there in the market all have strong positions with those talking points.
Because right now there are lots of candidates. Dan, can you just remind us of the process? Because it seems like a crowded field right now. could get more crowded before we get clarity on who those final two will be.
Yeah, absolutely. So the exact rules are actually being set this evening by the 1922 committee that runs leadership contests for the Conservative Party. Now, in the past, in order to make it onto the ballot paper to begin with, you needed the backing of 8 MPs. And then what you'd see is slowly what you'd need as a quota to make it into the next one would ratchet up until you're left with 2 to go to the members. What we're expecting to see tonight is that initial quota of around 8 MPs move up significantly, potentially as high as 36 MPs, in a bid to try to very quickly crown up the field and end up with our final 2 as
well. Sunak is sort of there in that area already, but I thought it was quite surprising, bearing in mind her profile, that Penny Mordaunt was the next one behind him at over 20 endorsements.
Yeah, Penny Mordaunt, she may not be the biggest face known around the country, but quietly she's been working very hard at winning over Tory MPs behind the scenes, proving her credentials over a number of months and kind of saying, look, I'm a Brexiteer, I believe in free trade, I'm not tainted by being a member of the cabinet. She is only currently a minister, not a cabinet minister, and she hopes that that's going to win over backbench.
And also, I suppose she has a bit of profile as well. There was that, do you remember seeing her on that show, Splash? I think it was an ITV Saturday night show.
I didn't watch it, but I can imagine. It was a diving competition, wasn't it?
Or something like that. I mean, the very fact that it seems to be, and I'd like to ask both of you, you know, you look at somebody like Donald Trump, elected on the basis of people knew him from a TV programme. You could argue very much the same with, God, I've forgotten his name, how quickly we forget, Boris Johnson. You could argue the same with him, that he had a high TV profile as well. Is it important?
I think having a high profile is incredibly important because at the end of the day, you're asking members of the public to back you.
Yeah.
You're asking for ordinary Tory members to back you. It's not just about MPs. So if you haven't been able to showcase and say, look, here's what I've done, then you need to have that profile to be able to boost that popularity.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, the way this election is going to go, obviously it gets put to the members, and in terms of popularity, I think that would be important. But from a betting perspective, I think our punters are very shrewd when it comes to where the candidates are strong on, who they see as being a good fit for the next Conservative leader. And it's not just down to the MPs that are backing them, it's also down to the membership as well and how popular they will be.
Sam, the bookmaker is seldom wrong. Yeah, you confident with this?
Well, the punters have been pretty spot on recently with things. We saw a huge shift for Boris in the exit market on Tuesday. Before Rishi Sunak came out, I remember sitting in the office watching it and I was going, guys, something's going on here. You know, the punters are backing Boris to leave pretty rapidly, and then lo and behold, Rishi Sunak came out with his resignation letter and the cards fell. So, yeah, the punters at the minute, are leading the way on Rishi Sunak. He leads the way by some going as well when it comes to the money on the market. A third has been for him. He's been backed into 2-1. No one gets close to him at the minute in terms of the other candidates in popularity in the betting. So yeah, we'll certainly see. Obviously, he's got quite a lot of support from MPs.
See, what I find fascinating about that is you look at Sunak 6 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago, and you'd say finished, no chance. He's not going to have any sort of comeback.
Yeah, and actually, while he is the firm favourite, I think we do need to put some caution on the fact that there could be an unknown who comes through from all of this.
Yeah.
Now, in 2006, David Davis was widely expected to win the Conservative leadership contest, and it ended up being David Cameron. And he went on to, well, he won 2 general elections. So I think while Rishi Sunak is the clear favourite, some of those who are less well known wouldn't rule them out just yet.
Yeah. What do you make of this idea that Sunak could have been working with outside influences, you know, from as early as last Christmas?
Well,
The outside influence being Dominic Cummings, of course.
I think it's fair to say that with the leadership contest not officially starting until tonight, it's already getting rather dirty. The accusations being thrown at all the candidates, Rishi Sunak is already having to fight off these claims and say they're just not true. Now, who knows if they're true or not? I don't know. Only he will really know that. But already, before it's even began, he's having to really fight his corner and, you know, fight for his reputation.
How much can that actually damage the perspective that the public hold of the Conservative Party? Here we go. They need to say we've got a united front. We're going to pull this back together, restore confidence in our party. And the main thing we're seeing is quite a lot of mudslinging.
What's really damaging for the Conservative Party is that this is going to go on probably until September. So if this is the mudslinging we've seen over just 3 or 4 days, imagine how bad it's going to be once we've seen 2 months of this. And that's what I think a lot of backbenchers are really nervous about, is when they're trying to prove that they're serious to the public, that if this is the damage now, what's it going to be like when this is all complete?
OK, Dan, thank you very much indeed. Sam, thanks very much. Sam, of course, he's got the figures, the runners and riders there from the bookmaking perspective there, and there it is on his board. He is a political betting expert from Betfair. But we're going to be running our own poll now all morning to hear who you think should be the next Conservative leader and Prime Minister. What do you think about all of this?
And particularly the issues that matter to you the most. So Liz Truss is saying, I would cut taxes from day one. Is that what's most important to you? Well, have your say. If you go onto our Twitter page at GB News, you'll find the poll there and you can leave some comments below too.
OK. And, you know, bear in mind, how are they going to cut taxes if they talk about increased spending for, say, maybe the NHS, for social care, for the armed forces, for instance? You know, let us know your views. Can you have one without the other, or is it all just hot air? 11 minutes past 6. Let's bring you up to date with what's happening news-wise.
So more than a half of people worry about dangerously long waits for emergency treatment if they fall ill. Around 60% of people surveyed don't believe an ambulance would arrive quickly if they needed, with nearly 2/3 thinking they'd have a long wait to be seen in A&E.
Over 4 million households in Britain have resorted to buying lower quality food to cope with the living squeeze. Financial researchers say an additional 1.6 million households have had money problems since October last year. The data also shows soaring inflation has hit lower and middle income families the hardest.
Oh, travel. A new study says flights from Birmingham Airport had the longest delays in the UK last year. Researchers from the Civil Aviation Authority say planes were about 12.5 minutes late taking off. That doesn't sound too bad as long as it's actually leaving. Southampton Airport had the second poorest record, followed then by Heathrow.
Now, around 1 in 3 people have stopped saving for a home due to rising living costs.
A survey conducted by TSB Bank found 83% of people surveyed are anxious about their personal finances.
Now, half of those questions say you're worried about rising fuel and energy costs, and we've got now Cunley Barker. He's a property expert with us now to talk about this. Cunley, does this mean, in effect, so many more people have now just given up on the idea, on the dream of buying their own bricks and mortar?
Sadly, I think you might be right, because this is just the last of recent increases that have stopped people from probably getting on the property ladder. So the general increase in house prices has had an effect on that, and now there's this cost of living pinch. Of course, when people are calculating what they can afford to pay for a mortgage, now things like fuel prices have doubled and are set to increase again in October and even again in April 23. So this is a really big problem, and it stops people getting on the housing ladder.
It was only a few weeks ago that Boris Johnson laid out this sort of radical overhaul of the housing market, saying he was going to look at mortgages because it was crazy that people were spending probably more than they would be on a mortgage on their rent. Has any of that had any cut through?
No, not at all, because nothing the government have said or even done has actually got to the heart of the actual problem. And the heart of the problem is we're not building enough homes of the right quality.
But Cunley, how do they get away with it? I often call out, it's just talk. A lot of it's headlines. There's no commitment. I mean, all this nonsense about selling off social housing again when we just don't even have enough social housing stock. And yet they get away with it. So we're actually, tell you what, at this stage we're going to bring in, and be interested in your view with it. Here's a GB Breakfast News viewer, Colin Cockfield. Colin is a retired architectural liaison officer for Staffordshire Police, and he joins us now from Wolverhampton. Colin, You've been listening to what Connolly's saying there. What's your take on all of this?
Yeah, it's nothing new, really. It comes and goes in waves, doesn't this housing crisis? There's so many blockers at the moment for housing. One of the issues is, of course, the lack of release of green belt land to be built on. And this forces prices up because it's a case of supply and demand. So there's a big demand for not only houses to buy, but houses to rent. So it isn't just one issue. You know, we've got a local, for instance, we've got a local MP, Conservative MP, who's backing a group of people who are trying to stop being greenbelt being built on in our local area. And yet the Conservatives have just recently said we're going to increase building on greenbelt area. But one of their own are sort of backing the local NIMBY brigade, if you like, not in my backyard. So that's just one of the issues.
Yeah.
Have you got that in your area, this sort of idea that, we need more homes, but maybe not next door to me, not in Wolverhampton?
Exactly, yeah. One of our local MPs, a Conservative MP, is actually backing a group that are trying to prevent housing being built on Greenbelt, which is actually in another area. It's in a different constituency, not even in their own constituency. It's where it abuts the conurbation.
Just say you've got a lovely kitchen.
So it's just expansion of the conurbation, really. It's not even building in Greenbelt area. It's extending the conurbation into the Greenbelt area.
Yeah, you didn't hear me complimenting his kitchen.
That is just
He's off.
Another one is where
Yes.
years ago they started to try and get people to use over-the-shop developments. So in town centres, where we've got empty flats above shops, is to convert those into housing. And that's come to a grinding halt because not that many people want to live in town centres. For example.
OK, Connolly, Collins mentioned those two words, or is it one word, Greenbelt? Is that one word or two?
I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway, there's a lot of green over this country, but it inflames people. I mean, you fly over the country and there's so much green belt, but maybe we're too precious about it. I mean, I like saving trees as much as anybody and seeing nice areas, and there's still a lot of brown belt areas that we could be, brown sites that we could be building on as well. So what do you make of that?
Yeah, look, we need to build more houses, and that's the way we solve this problem. Looking at Greenbelt is one of the solutions, and I think the government need to be careful with that. Brownfield sites, though, I think are very exciting. Change of use sites, so ex-MOD sites, hospitals, even land that was used for other things.
Battersea Power Station in London.
Battersea Power Station. And we've got to think differently about density, the ways that we live in houses. So, you know, this kind of shared living model where units are smaller, but there's lots of shared facilities like bars, cinemas, co-working, and normally aimed at younger people. And it's an interesting way to get them onto the housing ladder. But
explain that to me again, the shared facilities.
So effectively, you have a smaller unit or a smaller living area.
Yes.
Okay. But within those, you have a lot of shared facilities. So you have bars, even cinemas, co-working, and for younger people, that's more attractive, and it's an easier way to get onto the housing market.
Well, it used to be called community.
Community.
Yeah. And, you know, when I grew up on a sort of Coronation Street type terraced house on a main road.
Yeah.
But beside us was a fruit and veg shop. Across the road was a chemist, was a bakery, was an ice cream parlour, was the butcher's. So it really did feel everybody mixed and they had those facilities which brought a community together. And there's some bad planning, which brings me back then to Colin, from your point of view, with architecture being your business. Why don't we think more about integrating communities and making areas where we live more than just houses, more than just bricks and mortar?
Okay, so if we look at what you just said, Eamonn, the housing estates that were built in the post-war through the 50s and through the 60s, a lot of these social housing estates were built with their facilities, as you say, with a chemist and a butcher's and a bakery and etc. They can't exist anymore. They just don't survive in the commercial world. So a lot of those units are either empty, have been demolished, or are being converted back to housing. So idealistic that is, it doesn't actually work in today's society.
But also, Colin, what you're saying, if the government start releasing more green belt areas, and Cunley was making this point as well, it gives them the chance to build more houses. The more houses you build, the prices come down.
Well, yeah, that is supply and demand, except, of course, that the prices are artificially high at the moment because of COVID. The price of timber, price of bricks and everything else that goes into constructing a house has shot through the roof in the last 6 months, really, 12 months. So although it could stabilise once the manufacturing of all the products that go into building a house, eventually, it's not going to happen in the short term. I can't see that happening.
Okay. Colin, really, thank you very much indeed for getting us in touch and for airing this. Very, very topical today. Colin Cockfield there, a GB Breakfast viewer and listener from Wolverhampton. So, Cunley, this is not going to get better anytime soon, is it?
No, and there's lots of factors here. There's the factors that we're not building enough houses in the right places of the right type. That isn't helping. We've got 6 or 7 big companies to control almost sort of 80% of house building in this country. Most of Europe, it's much different. More people build their own houses. There's some interesting schemes at the moment in the UK, self and custom build schemes, allowing people to build their own houses. So they look the way that they want them to look, and they provide the space that they need. But the other problem, of course, is this cost of living crisis. And one of the big factors in that is fuel cost, the cost of heating or the energy in our homes. That is set to rise again in October and probably again in
And that's going to stop more people saving.
People will not be able to save. I mean, they won't even be thinking about that. They'll be thinking about, my cost has tripled just to heat my home. How do I do that? And the big issue, the one that nobody's talking about, the government need to be talking about this, there's 28 million homes in the UK, and most of which aren't insulated properly, most of which waste most of that energy that is now costing people 3 times as much to buy.
What advice would you give? I mean, we're talking here, 1 in 3 people, they've just decided, look, I'm going to stop saving for a deposit on a house. Well, we all totally understand that. We all totally understand that. Is it just a different way of thinking? I mean, going into the rental market, it's just the reality that they have to face? Or would you say, look, however much it hurts, hang in there? Or what do you have any advice?
Yeah, my advice is try to save. Try to save, as much as you can. Look at ways of reducing costs, reducing waste in terms of what you use, what you consume. But, it's really tricky because when I bought my first house in London, and I needed about £8,000 in cash. I borrowed some from my parents.
Deposit?
For the deposit. Borrowed some from my parents. Yeah. And I did a pretty good job at the time. Put some on a credit card. Cunley Barker today, of that age, in his first or second job, would need the best part of £120,000 to buy exactly that same flat. The problem is that in that time when I bought my flat, house prices, inflation, has been like 17%. So it's outstripped wage inflation considerably. Yeah. So it's just gone like that. It means that, the Cunley Barker of now, who's left university maybe 2 years ago, how is that person meant to buy a flat in London?
Beats me, mate. You okay? You on the property ladder?
I have a flat that I bought with help, like everybody. Yep. Everybody has to do that. But the problem is now parents as well are thinking, we can't afford to help our children.
Yeah.
It's not that straightforward.
Or which child do you help? If you've got 4 or 5 of them,
Well, I'm one of 4, which is actually, I think, stood me in good stead for the rest of my life.
Look, this is awful. Be like Colin, get in touch with us and let us know what you think about all of this. You can tweet at GB News, and the email is right there on your screen, gbnews.uk. Cunley Barker, fascinating talking to you. Thanks very much indeed.
Pleasure.
Fascinating, but not uplifting. because the reality's not good,
Truth
is it?
sometimes isn't uplifted, unfortunately.
No, sad situation. Thank you very much, Steve.
It's 25 minutes past 6. You're watching GB News or listening to us on your radio. Coming up, we're going to be in North Allerton in North Yorkshire to meet the unpaid carer calling on the government to give them much more financial support during this cost of living crisis. That's after the weather. Looking ahead to today's weather, the UK is going to be dry, sunny for many of us with blue skies and some hot sunshine. Let's take a look at the details. So at lunchtime in the southwest of the UK, there's going to be plenty of blue skies, hot sun. UV levels are going to be really high and temperatures are rising to the mid-20s. It's going to be hot and sunny across London and the southeast of England as we approach midday. Temperatures around 27 Celsius. There's going to be sunshine in abundance across Wales this lunchtime. Perhaps a little low cloud lapping onto north-facing coasts. Here will be about 24 degrees Celsius. In the Midlands, a hot and sunny day. Hardly a cloud in the sky with very high UV levels. Temperatures rising to around 27 Celsius by midday. Wind staying quite light. What about the northeast of England? Plenty of sunshine here, though it may turn quite hazy as high cloud moves in from the north. Feeling warm with temperatures around 26 degrees, a little bit cooler towards the coast. Across Scotland, lots of sunshine here as well. It's going to be quite hazy though. Winds will be nice and light with temperatures approaching the low 20s. In Northern Ireland, it's going to be dry and sunny heading towards lunchtime. Quite hazy here too with high cloud. That will move in from the west. Temperatures around 22 degrees at lunchtime. So across the UK, it's going to be dry, hot and sunny for most of us. Rain will arrive in the far northwest later.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
The time is coming up to 6:30. You're very welcome on board with breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Rosie.
Right, still to come on the programme this morning. We're going to be asking the former Housing Secretary, Robert Jenrick, why he's backing the former Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, for Prime Minister. He's going to be with us just before 7.
And coming up in the next hour, the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, is preparing to give a speech. That's going to happen at 10 o'clock this morning, laying out his election plan. We're going to be speaking to his Shadow Secretary for Work and Pensions, that's Jonathan Ashworth, 7:10.
Please do get in touch, particularly what do you make of the current list of runners and riders to be the next Prime Minister? You can email us gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet us too @gbnews.
here's a story worth highlighting. An unpaid carer in North Yorkshire is petitioning for more financial assistance for over 500,000 families dealing with dementia at home.
Derek Brown has gained the backing of his local MP Rishi Sunak to push for a council tax discount for all carers. Well, our reporter Anna Riley followed up.
Come on, just drink this.
Derek Brown looks after his wife Margaret, who's lived with dementia since 2018. And after a 3-year campaign, he secured a petition in Parliament. It intends to help others with loved ones with dementia to secure council tax discounts as soon as they're diagnosed. It's something that could give a one-off benefit of hundreds up to thousands of pounds.
I'm fighting for 600,000 people in the UK who've got dementia, of living at home, and they've got next to no financial assistance. We're in the middle of a financial crisis where people are struggling to get day-to-day things. They're struggling, like Margaret's got double incontinence. That means we have to wash twice and 3 times a day. The bedding's wet, our clothes are wet. The electricity bill, the energy bills, they're shooting up. It costs more for that. We can't particularly go anywhere in the car, but if we do, that's costing us more. So it's costing, and every single aspect of the financial crisis at the moment. It's time for the government to step in and say, look, we recognise the fact that we're saving the health service millions of pounds.
As well as the financial burden of being an unpaid carer, Derek has also had to bear the emotional toll of Margaret's condition.
It won't get better. There's only one way she's going, and that's the same as everybody else with dementia. It's a one-way ticket. There's no cure for dementia. I've lost Margaret mentally. I love her to bits. There's nothing on this planet I wouldn't do to look after her. I love her to bits. But it's hard when you say to somebody, you're saying that you love them, and they're looking at you as if they don't know who you are.
Now all Derek can do is hope that his petition is passed in Parliament. Anna Riley, GB News, Northallerton.
Look at that. That's so sad. It's so sad. And Derek is so committed. And obviously, he loves Margaret very much. I don't know how much Margaret's aware, but you saw she gave a kiss there, which is great. But here's the point. Derek is saving social care and National Health Service, whatever, a lot of time, effort, money. Margaret is getting more personalised care because it is Derek doing it. So he's got a point, hasn't he, about being paid, and because it's still saving social care and national health money.
And that was a desperate plea from him to say that he's not got a choice. He's going to do that day in, day out, dedicated, motivated by so much love and care. And should that be recognised, and should it be financially recognised? And for him, he's saying this is an untenable situation.
Yeah. Maybe it's a bit of a no-brainer. Maybe it's not to you. Let us know. You're probably going through this, or a lot of you may be going through this whole situation yourselves. Let us know what you think. But, it's the usual thing, Rosie. Money. Everything's about money. Everything. And these candidates running for the Conservative leadership, they all talk about, well, most of them talk about cutting taxes. But without taxes, you can't pay people like Derek. That's the thing. So it's a hard choice to make, isn't it?
It's brutal, and actually cutting taxes seems to be the main thing that the candidates so far that have put themselves forward are saying they'll do, all bar the former Chancellor Rishi Sunak. Does that have something to say about what's actually there? How much money we've got to spend?
Well, you have your say. Let us know. It's GB Views at gbnews.uk, or it's tweet at GB News as well. We've got the papers coming up, the Monday morning newspapers. Chris Akabusi and Emily Carver right after this. Hope you can join us.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
6:36 is the time on this Monday morning. You're watching and listening to Breakfast here on GB News with Eamonn and Rosie.
Well, let's bring you up to date with the latest news. 11 candidates now in the contest to replace Boris Johnson as the leader of the Conservative Party. The Foreign Secretary, Liz Truss, announced she's entering the race for the party leadership, pledging to reverse the national insurance hike and keep corporation tax competitive.
Meanwhile, Sir Keir Starmer will announce that Labour will fight the next election on growing the economy. In a speech in the North East, he'll pledge a fresh start for Britain. The Labour leader plans to hit at what he calls the hypocrisy of those who served in Boris Johnson's government.
It's getting warm. A heat health alert has been issued for parts of the UK as temperatures are predicted to hit 33 degrees Celsius this week. Forecasters say it could be the hottest day of the year today. People are being asked to check on those vulnerable to extreme heat.
Because it's going to be the hottest day of the year today, and because it's a working day, I thought, I have this suit. And I thought, if I don't wear it today, there's no chance. I mean, what's the point? It's a bit bright, isn't it?
I don't think well, it's definitely summer vibes.
Summer vibes.
Exactly. And you could wear it all week. I mean, we just said it could be 33 at one point this week.
Yes.
I saw one report that said in London it might be 35 on Friday.
Yes, I could wear the same suit, you're right, just change the tie and the shirt.
Exactly.
That's right.
How many wears do you get out of one suit?
Well, you see, with this particular colour, not a lot. You can't wear this in December, can you?
Not in December. But for the hottest day of the week,
anyway,
it's perfect.
A man who likes his suits as well, Olympian Chris Akabusi there. Very good to see you, Chris. What have you got now? What's your blazer?
No, I'm rocking my London 2012, where I
So
was...
you are. Team GB London 2012.
London 2012, yeah.
Good
I was an ambassador.
What a summer that was, my goodness. We're all missing that.
We've got the columnist for Conservative Home, Emily Carver. Very nice, and looking very summery, Emily, as well.
Thank you. Well, I thought I'd dress coolly for the office later.
Good. Not too cool. It's all heating up in the Conservative leadership race. We go to the Telegraph. Liz Truss is making her intentions clear there.
They're all throwing their hat in the ring, aren't they? So, yes, Liz Truss is saying, I would cut taxes from day one. She's announced her leadership bid. But cutting taxes from day one, I think, as you mentioned earlier, it seems they're all saying that, apart from Rishi Sunak, who probably will be feeling the pressure. That's what the Telegraph is saying. This will be more pressure on Rishi Sunak to also say he's going to be cutting taxes because, of course, he's the forerunner at this moment. Now, Liz Truss is a funny one. She's very, very popular with the party faithful, with the Conservative members. They like the fact that she's what you'd call a true Conservative insofar as she believes in low taxes, a smaller state, Conservative values in that respect. Would she be likeable to the general public? I'm not sure, but she has held many, many positions in different governments under different prime ministers. She's currently Foreign Secretary, so she's got a lot of experience. She's saying again, making corporation tax competitive, cutting it potentially, because our corporation tax already is quite competitive. She also wants to scrap that national insurance hike. But she's going to have to do more than just rely on taxes, because they're all saying that.
Yeah, they're all saying that. You're absolutely right. What do you think they need to be saying, Chris?
Well, I think it's not about talking, it's about what they're actually going to do. And I need to see how they're going to implement.
Chris, we're struggling with your microphone.
Oh, don't tell me we've not turned it on, no!
While we sort that out. Oh, it's on. You're back.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Right, okay, yeah. So...
That's the first time I'll ever...
You
haven't heard Chris Acker.
Yeah, exactly. Normally say, turn him down, not turn him up, yeah.
You just know when you're in the building. You hear him. Yeah.
So, so I'm much more about the implementation and how they're going to implement things. You know, you can promise the earth. You know, there's a slogan in Nigeria, power to the people, but only on election day. So, you know, they can promise you the earth, but when they get into office, can they deliver? Now, I think Miss Truss was made to look a little bit... I'm trying to be polite, but anyway, when she started off with the Foreign Secretary in Russia, I think there were some issues that were highlighted that showed that she might not be across the brief as you might want it to be. Now, we've had enough of that with Mr. Johnson. You know, I do like Boris, but we've had lots of style. I want to see the substance. You know, who's going to be in her team? How are they going to implement some of these ideas? Yeah, of course, everyone wants to talk about cutting taxes, but as you pointed out, it's taxes that pay for all the infrastructure, and we're going to be talking about the NHS sooner or later.
On that, I think whoever wins this needs to be honest that if they are going to cut taxes, they need to also rein in public spending, and no one wants to say they're going to rein in public spending, apart from Kemi Badenoch, who in her pitch in The Times did say that she would rein in public spending in order to pay for tax cuts, and that is honest. You need to. You can't splurge constantly and then expect to be able to cut taxes at the same time. Honestly,
that might win you, and we're just going to say, that might win you the Conservative nomination, Conservative leadership, but would it win you an election?
No, I mean, look at all the different voices constantly asking for money. Every different part of the public sector, of course, and then, of course, people are always wanting more money for this and that and whatever, which is understandable, but it's, you know...
And the election is kind of like battleground number 2. Battleground number 1 is getting yourself behind the podium to be the person representing the party. While we're doing that, Emily's talked about honesty. What we're actually seeing, front page of the Daily Mail, is already mudslinging between candidates. Just explain what's going on.
Well, the Daily Mail just talks about the rise by Mr. Cummings. Now, Mr. Cummings...
Oh, we're battling with your mic again.
Oh, sugar!
I don't think it's your fault. It must be on our end.
Just come in now.
In the meantime, Emily, can you explain what's going on? Because
I don't have it in front of me, but essentially the accusation is that Rishi Sunak has been using Dominic Cummings to brief, essentially, about other candidates.
And there's a bit of a suggestion, isn't there, from some of the candidates that Rishi Sunak actually has had this leadership bid in the pipelines for quite a long time. He released this very slick video that looks like it was made in a shorter time, 48 hours. People are saying, you didn't make that video in that time.
No, it very much looked like he'd had the website ready and waiting.
I just want to say here, just explaining here, people get paranoid because they think people at home don't know this is a TV studio and that there are people around you and whatever it is. That is, Chris Agabusi's microphone has gone down. It is like a pit stop. We're now replacing it. And this is young Jack, who's carrying out the...
Might as well say hello.
Thank you, Jack. Good. Now we've got that. OK, sorry.
Anyway, Rishi has been ready and waiting. His website domain was very much already paid for, it looked like, 6 months ago.
Yeah, and the thing is, so Nadine Dorries is a very loyal supporter of Boris Johnson. So when we're talking about Cummings, I think she's talking about his role in bringing down Boris Johnson, all the leaks. And it's the idea being portrayed here is that Mr. Sunak knew all along and was involved in some way, shape or form. No. He would deny that, of course.
Yeah, of course they're going to deny it. And of course they're all going to deny they all hate each other. But I just wanted to ask the two of you, I mean, imagine in a work environment, if someone doesn't like you, they may keep it private or whatever, but they play out their lives in public. You know, I mean, Michael Gove being called a snake last week, and, you know, it is quite obvious. So many of these people and people in politics cannot stand each other. How on earth do they work together in an office?
But it's so sneaky, you know, all the briefing, the press, not saying it to their faces. I mean, God knows what, you know, the different candidates are going to say over the next few weeks about each other. You know, speaking to a political correspondent here, a reporter there, briefing all the papers. I don't know how they all work together.
No.
Well, strong
It's
personalities.
poisonous.
Yeah, well, I mean, you don't have to like your colleague to respect what he or she is capable of doing. So, ideally in a team, you've got people who are uniquely qualified to do the particular roles. And although you might not like their personality, you like their professionality.
And you can relate to that in sport and a sporting team.
100%.
And having rivals who, you know, you might fear or you might not even like, or you don't like their attitude, but you can respect them.
Yeah, but well, in track and field athletics, actually, what you recognise is that without them, you can't perform.
Meaning they push you.
They push you, yeah. They help you raise the bar performance. So, you know, the records that I set back 30 years ago, I could not have done without the likes of Ed Moses, etc., to compete against. Or training with Roger Black and Derek Redmond, who I was a quarter miler, they pushed me out and made me recalibrate as to what I wanted to do next. So, you know, in politics, it could be exactly the same. But actually what we see is snakes in the grass, Mr Sunak pulling down his erstwhile boss and then showing that for the last 6 months, rather than working in the economy, stupid, I've actually been working on my own private presentations.
Who would you like to be the next leader of the Conservative Party?
Again, I want to see much more about what they've got to offer, because it's not style, it's substance. But I think it's people who have been really quiet at the moment, like Miss Mordaunt. I know she's started to come out of the blocks, but
She's doing very well. So
yeah, she speaks very, very well. She's a woman who's been at grassroots. So her dad was in the Navy. She's held portfolios in a couple of governments. And I think she's slowly making it so that, sort of about the noise now, Mr Sunak, no chance. He who wields a knife rarely wears a crown. It's going to be those guys who are quiet now, but come in with a bang in the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Emily, I'd make it clear, I don't vote for anybody. I enjoy this. This is like appointing a new football manager to a team or whatever. But I often look at Jeremy Hunt, and I often think Jeremy Hunt looks the part, he acts the part, he's got the knowledge, he's got the experience. Why does he not set everyone alight?
Well, yes, he did lose before. I think he's got a touch of the Keir Starmer about him. He's a little bit wooden. He's also, of course, not a fan favourite among parts of the Conservative Party because he was very much a Remainer and people don't trust him on Brexit. They think he might want to, renegotiate with the EU, which means a closer relationship, which a lot of Conservative members would not like to see. However, his big pitch is that he's going to have Esther McVey as his deputy. Mm-hmm. And Esther, of course, appeals to northern
She appeals
seats.
to me.
Appeals to... Does she? She's always got a fabulous blow-dry. She just always looks
But that's because she's a former TV presenter. Esther and I presented breakfast television together, and we presented a great programme on BBC One called How Did They Do That? On Wednesday night at 8 o'clock, before she then became really famous.
With Mr Hunt as well, there's a sense that he's not his own man, that actually he does other people's bidding within the party. I think Oliver Letwin, for example, was very big in running a lot of his things back in the day. And also, not only was the Brexiteer, but when it comes to lockdown, he wanted it for longer, harder, much more of a Chinese style.
Now he's saying he didn't. Now he's saying he wouldn't have done that.
But he was caught on saying it. So I don't know how conservative he is.
Could I ask you just both briefly, ambulances? I had I don't know if it's the misfortune or fortune to be taken in an ambulance 5 weeks ago. And I was very lucky to get an ambulance because of what happened to my back. But it's the roughest ride I've ever experienced in my life. There's no comfort in it. You're lying. There's no suspension in them or anything. It's incredible. However, I digress.
Did your condition get worse?
Well, it could have, but the crew was so fantastic, and I just was lucky to get one. ambulance crews getting stuck outside A&E. I mean, this is in the Mirror, this is front page of the Mirror today, and everybody knows about this. It's the worst ever crisis, Emily, they're describing this as.
I know, we always talk about the winter crisis in the NHS. Apparently we're facing a June summer crisis. Patients wait up to 27 hours outside A&E. That is crazy.
So it becomes like a hospital bed.
Yeah.
They live in this ambulance for 27 hours.
Parked outside, in the heat, in God knows what condition, waiting to be seen. And the problem is that because there are so many people in the A&E waiting room and then being seen, there aren't the hospital beds, so it's all just, it's all just piling up. And this is something that the leadership contenders
Well,
need
precisely.
to be talking about.
And when we're talking about public spending, people will be saying, actually, I care more about being able to call 999 and get speedily seen at hospital. Emily, thank you very much. Chris, thank you to you too. They'll be joining us in about 40 minutes. Right now, it's 10 to 7 on Breakfast. And as we've just been hearing, 11 candidates now in the race to replace Boris Johnson as leader of the Conservative Party.
OK, currently leading the pack with the most endorsements, the former Chancellor Rishi Sunak, one of the people backing him, the former Housing Secretary, Robert Jenrick, who joins us now from Westminster. Robert, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Why is Rishi your boy?
Well, I've known Rishi for a long time, and I think he is someone of real ability. And at times like this, when we're facing a really significant and global economic crisis, and the Prime Minister on day one will have to be tackling issues of great seriousness affecting millions of people across the country, you want the most credible person to be sat there making those decisions. And I think Rishi's record through the pandemic speaks for itself. People trust him and they know he's competent, and that makes him the right person to be Prime Minister.
He has got a couple of battles, doesn't he? I don't know if you were able to listen to our paper review, but there are accusations that he was sort of orchestrating Boris Johnson's downfall. Lots of people have had issues with the wealth of his family. How's he going to overcome those optics?
Well, lots of things will be thrown at different candidates over the next 2 weeks. Personally, I think it's best to focus on what that individual can really offer the country. And as I say, I think Rishi is the person of the greatest ability. He's an incredible hard worker. He's someone who has achieved enormous things already for the country. I mean, for example, the furlough scheme that protected 11.5 million people's jobs and had contributed so much to the low levels of unemployment that we have today. I think he's got the best plan to grow the economy in the years ahead, to get taxes down over time, but do so in a way which is credible and can ensure that we also don't allow borrowing to get out of control. Of course, people will question certain things about his personal life. We'll hear that about all the other candidates, I'm sure, as well. But I don't think that's what really matters now. Choose the best possible person to lead the country through a very challenging 2 years. And front and centre will be the economy. And so choose the most economically literate person and the person that the public trust the most to deliver for them economic growth, jobs and lower taxes in the long run.
But Mr. Jenrick, he is the only one of the candidates that's delivering a bad message, a negative message. It may well be the truth, but, I mean, he's basically saying we cannot cut taxes. Everybody else is saying we're going to cut taxes. And, you know, saying cutting taxes may get them elected leader of the Conservative Party. It may well win a general election as well. Is Mr. Sunak going to win a general election saying, no, I'm not cutting your taxes?
Well, firstly, all of the polling suggests that Rishi is the most likely candidate to win a general election. He's the most known, the most trusted by the public, and the polls suggest he would win in the north and the south, in Remain voting areas and previous Leave voting areas as well. But on the core question you're asking about tax and the economy, few people in the Conservative Party have argued for lower taxes more than me over the course of the last year. And I know Rishi, I've known him for more than 10 years. He is a tax-cutting Conservative, but he wants to do so with a real plan. He doesn't want to make up unfunded promises and announce them on the hoof. That's not a responsible thing to do. The public will see through that. What the public are crying out for right now, I believe, is professionalism and credibility. And on the economy, they want to see someone who has a serious plan. How can we bear down on inflation, which is the cause of the inflationary issues that people are feeling? How can we get confidence in the economy? How can we grow it over the next 5 to 10 years? And by doing so, how can we sustainably cut taxes? Just announcing, as part of a leadership campaign, 30, 40, 50 billion pounds of largely unfunded tax cuts is not going to do any good for the credibility of the Conservative Party, because the public aren't fools. They can see through that. They want a Prime Minister who's economically literate and has a very clear plan for the economy. And I think that's Rishi Sunak. He is the person who understands the economy better than anybody else. And his plan enables us to cut taxes, get growth going in the economy, but do so in a way which is fiscally conservative. Because we Conservatives believe in low tax, of course we do. It's a core tenet of our beliefs. We also believe in fiscal conservatism, not borrowing too much, not leaving future generations to bear the costs of our own irresponsibility.
You're talking about the plans that have been laid out there. There are allegations being made, it's on the front page of the Mail this morning, that he's orchestrating that plan with Dominic Cummings. Is he?
No, absolutely not. I don't believe that Rishi has spoken to Dominic Cummings since he left government 2 years ago. Dominic was Boris Johnson's appointment, not Rishi Sunak's. This campaign is Rishi's. He's his own man. He's got his own ideas for the country, set out in great detail in brilliant speeches like the Mays lecture that he gave earlier this year. And that is the vision for the future of the country and the economy that he's going to be setting out here to parliamentary colleagues over the next few days, and hopefully to members of the Conservative Party in the weeks to come.
Robert Jenrick, thanks for your time today. Got to leave it there. Appreciate it. Robert Jenrick is the Conservative MP for Newark and a backer of Rishi Sunak.
Yeah, the story will change quite a lot today. More candidates potentially may declare their intention to run for leader of the Conservatives. We really want to hear from you. Who would, if you're a member of the Conservative Party, maybe you are one, who would get your vote? We've just had a very sort of passionate view for why Rishi Sunak is on top for Robert Jenrick, but let us know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Back after this.
Looking ahead to today's weather, the UK is going to be dry, sunny for many of us with blue skies and some hot sunshine. Let's take a look at the details. So at lunchtime in the southwest of the UK, there's going to be plenty of blue skies, hot sun. UV levels are going to be really high and temperatures are rising to the mid-20s. It's going to be hot and sunny across London and the southeast of England as we approach midday. Temperatures around 27 Celsius. There's going to be sunshine in abundance across Wales this lunchtime. Perhaps a little low cloud lapping onto north-facing coasts. Here will be about 24 degrees Celsius. In the Midlands, a hot and sunny day. Hardly a cloud in the sky with very high UV levels. Temperatures rising to around 27 Celsius by midday. Wind staying quite light. What about the northeast of England? Plenty of sunshine here, though it may turn quite hazy as high cloud moves in from the north. Feeling warm with temperatures around 26 degrees, a little bit cooler towards the coast. Across Scotland, lots of sunshine here as well. It's going to be quite hazy though. Winds will be nice and light with temperatures approaching the low 20s. In Northern Ireland, it's going to be dry and sunny heading towards lunchtime. Quite hazy here too with high cloud. That will move in from the west. Temperatures around 22 degrees at lunchtime. So across the UK, it's going to be dry, hot and sunny for most of us. Rain will arrive in the far northwest later.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know. The latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel, And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
The Foreign Secretary joins the race for Conservative leadership.
Hello there, very good morning to you. Just after 7 o'clock on this Monday, the 11th of July, you're tuned into Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Rosie Wright.
Well, here's what's leading the news this morning. The Foreign Secretary, Liz Truss, has joined now 10 other candidates in the race to become the next Conservative leader and then Prime Minister. She launched her bid with a promise to cut taxes from day one.
The former Chancellor Rishi Sunak has denied claims that he is in contact with Dominic Cummings, the former advisor, after he launched a series of attacks on Tory leadership candidates.
And in the tennis, Novak Djokovic has beaten Australia's Nick Kyrgios to win his 4th consecutive men's singles title. Post-match, Kyrgios hailed his opponent as a tennis god.
Yeah, I have to say, post-match was probably even better than the match itself, so it was great entertainment.
Well, why do you say that?
Because the crack between them, the entertainment, the banter between them was very, very good. And the respect for two men who obviously at one stage did not like each other. It was very good, very good.
And just great to see Wimbledon alive,
yes.
Hot, fun. I was out and about and just brilliant. Those massive open-air screenings in and around the capital of loads of people all getting together, picnic in hand, Pimm's in the other, and cheering along.
And poor Sue Barker.
I know. Well, not poor. I think it's always good to end on a high.
Yeah, but she's class act.
She
elegant and
is
class act.
elegance personified.
Yeah. Let us know your view. You can join in any of our discussions. You can email gbviews@gbnews.uk. You can tweet as well. And I'm sure a comment has come in. But anyway, we'll get to it shortly. I can't see. I don't know where I put my notes, unless you've got one there. No? Anything you want to say? No? Okay. We'll do all that later. Okay, back after this. Where are we at with the Conservative leadership race? The Foreign Secretary, Liz Truss, she's entered. She hopes to become the next leader of the Conservatives and, indeed, the next Prime Minister.
Well, the field has now 11 candidates, including, let's give you some of the names you'll definitely recognise, Health Secretary Jeremy Hunt, he's been here before, the Transport Secretary Grant Shapps and chief rival, the former Chancellor Rishi Sunak. Well, Liz Truss launched her bid, writing in the Telegraph newspaper, its front page today, that it was time to get back to Conservative values, and she's promised, like many of the candidates actually, to cut taxes. Liz Truss says she'll do that from day one.
OK, well, we've got a fascinating guest now. She's the former Director of Legislative Affairs at number 10 Downing Street, and she is Nika Da Costa. What are legislative affairs, Nikki? Sorry.
I was basically responsible under Theresa May and Boris Johnson for delivering their programme through Parliament. So anything that needed legislation, if you wanted to get things done, you came to me and said, how do we get there? How do we make it all mesh together?
And who came to you more often, or who understood you more, or who had their head around your particular job more, May or Johnson?
To be frank, it would largely be me going to the Prime Minister and saying, Prime Minister, you have a problem here, and there is a problem in the parliamentary party, or you're facing a rebellion, and these are your options. And
could you see a difference in the way that each worked?
Yes, absolutely. Theresa May was fantastic at doing her box. You know, if you sent in a note, she'd come back the next day and there'd be little annotations and she would say, you know, I know you say this on paragraph 6, but in your annex you've said this.
Yes.
And very great attention to detail. But it maybe potentially takes longer to come to a view, which can be a good thing. But Boris, more instinctive, very... for the time that I was serving him, very good at judging things in terms of how the public would feel about something. I left it in August.
Interesting. So different techniques there, but let me ask you this, and this is going to come to what we're talking about here. 11 candidates, disharmony within the camp maybe for all of this. Did all of this start with the way Theresa May was ditched? So there was always going to be bad blood. The well was always going to be poisoned between her and Boris Johnson, and this is the legacy of it all?
I think you have to think about any parliamentary party. Every MP is elected from a constituency base, and they all think that they would like to be Prime Minister and have the capabilities. So it's not like a business where you're constructing a team and everyone's going into it and there's a single objective. There's always going to be a degree to which people think, well, you know, I could have a shot at that. So I wouldn't root this in a particular individual or a particular set of time. I think what you're seeing right now is recognition that we are electing within the membership a Prime Minister, and that's a big step. And therefore, and for many, there will be a personal element of also it's a big prize, but they're wanting to get it right. And so I think that's going to create huge pressure, and that's why you see it at quite this intensity, because essentially it's 2 weeks. We have the rules out today, and then we'll have a couple of rounds this week, and then a couple of rounds next week. But by Thursday of next week, they'll have selected 2 candidates to go to the membership. So that's why you're seeing this intense fighting, because what they want to do is say, I need to make it through each round. So I'll do whatever I can to show what I stand for and who's backing me and those kind of things.
You started this interview by saying your role was going to Prime Ministers and say, I've identified these problems, we've got to solve them. What are the biggest problems now for whoever the candidates are?
I'll break this down in 2 ways. One, in terms of the biggest problems in terms that they might raise in terms of the membership, in terms of getting elected, and then secondly, in terms of the country. If we're focusing on the country, it's cost of living, it's housing, it's thinking about how we get on top with the economy, productivity, tackle inflation. If you're looking at the membership and you see actually some different issues coming forward, it's thinking about what are your conservative values? How can members think about, or MPs, think about how you will come at a problem. What are the premises by which you assess an issue?
People often referred to one of Boris Johnson's biggest attributes was his recognisability, his breakthrough factor that he had, his high profile. When you look at the list of who we've got there, I mean, there's quite a lot of them that people haven't heard of at all. How important is it to be able to have that breakthrough factor?
I think my personal view is I think it is really good to have 11 candidates right now. Also, in terms of the diversity, the leadership process, and will focus minds on the Conservatives. And as annoying as that is for Labour, they're going to have basically real focus on who are these people, and they will provide the strength probably for much of the cabinet going forward. So as a whole, if you think about a general election and you want to say, it's not just the one person going forward, it's the team effort. Let's say many of these candidates make it into the cabinet, which then goes to a general election. You've actually got a stronger team overall. So I think it might be quite interesting to see how it plays out.
If you were doing the job again, which of these candidates would you like to be advising?
When you've been on the inside, you assess people maybe a bit differently. And I will always focus on it a little bit from, there's the hygiene factor of what they believe, but also, and the passion that they come at it, but also are they effective? Will they listen to arguments? Will they take the time to look at it? And so there's so many strengths for all of them. I'm going to just choose 2. I'm going to say, from what I observed, Rishi Sunak is very, very capable. And I remember one of his team saying, and this was when we were during the pandemic, I've just done the equivalent with Rishi of 6 budgets in a row. And this was a team, and he'd built a team, and he never spared himself, and he was very willing to go into the arguments and also make the arguments publicly. One of the problems we've had in government is when you often get a lot of U-turns, it's because people aren't willing to make the case and stick with the case and make it easier for their MPs by fronting up those arguments. And so Rishi's very good at that, but others are very good at that as well. You know, Sajid Javid in the health team, particularly in terms of an issue that matters to me, in terms of what do you do about how many young people are feeling great distress with their bodies. And this comes into the issues in terms of gender and sex. Kemi Badenoch, amazing as a minister, very, very good at spotting that something needs to be done and then just painstakingly going at it. So there's so much strength that I could carry on in terms of bringing out the strengths of different candidates.
Well, you see, it's fascinating talking to you. I'd love you by my side. You know, you can see how the politician is all the talk, you're all the action, really. That's what do you do now?
I'm a consultant 3 days a week, and I look after my daughter. Outside of that, which is a rambunctious 2.5
So you're a political consultant, are you?
I work in terms of business risk advisory. I basically say to businesses, this is how things may play out.
Yes.
This is how to consider the environment in which you operate, and this is how to think about it.
So, how do you think this electoral race will play out? Who would you say is most likely at this stage to become the next leader of the Conservative Party?
I can't call it, and I'm not sure anyone else could. It's an extraordinary thing, partly because of this dynamic in that fight. You know, when we get down to 2, what were the calculations made within the parliamentary party for who to put forward, and then how will that play out in membership? So I genuinely can't call it, but I hope that they will, you know, rise to the challenge of having gone through this process.
Well, thank you for
it.
Sorry.
Yes, to a degree. You know, I wanted new challenges as well, and I wanted to come out of politics and find my own voice, because I found, you know, and that I was increasingly just parroting the line. You know, what's in the lobby lines pack, and I think it's also important to come out and spend some time finding your own way.
Well, I hope you do that, and it's fascinating talking to you, Nikki. Thanks for calling in to see us today. Nikki's the former Director of Legislative Affairs at Number 10 during Theresa May and Boris Johnson's time in office. Thank you for the insight. Appreciate it very much.
Because at some point, this is really exciting what's happening,
Yeah.
but it's also an awful lot of headaches and hard work and campaigning and lack of sleep. And I heard an interview with Matt Hancock over the weekend who said his advice to someone who was going into this was to make sure you slept enough and you ate enough. It's the basics, because we've got a really potentially turbulent 2 weeks ahead.
Look out for cameras. I think he should have added to all of that sort of thing as well. Nikki said she couldn't really call this one, but we've been running a poll throughout the programme this morning to hear who you think should be the next Tory leader and Prime Minister.
It's on our Twitter, but we also want to know what issues matter to you the most. Have your say by voting on our Twitter page. You can find it at GB News. And so far, the majority of you have been voting for Penny Mordaunt. She's currently the Minister for Trade Policy.
Interesting.
Do you want her as your Prime Minister? We'll have your say online. Head to our Twitter page at GB News.
OK. Now, the Labour leader, Keir Starmer, will give a speech today. He's going to do that in Newcastle, where he will pledge to grow the economy if he wins the general election. He is expected to blame the Conservatives for £200 billion worth of unfunded commitments and will accuse the government of hypocrisy over tax policy.
Well, the Shadow Work and Pension Secretary, Jonathan Ashworth, joins us now from Westminster. Very good morning to you. Now, at 10 o'clock, so a few hours' time, Keir Starmer's going to say the Labour Party offers a fresh start. What does that look like?
Well, you'll see today an ambitious and optimistic speech from Keir, outlining the fresh start that the British people are rightly demanding. Look, we have in this country the resources, the technical know-how, the industrious people to build and grow our economy, to provide good employment for all, to improve living standards sustainably and maintain stability in the cost of living. So we want to end this cost of living crisis. We want to get people into good, well-paying jobs, and we want to revitalise our public services. And you'll see a contrast with what Labour is offering with a clear and costed plan, with the multi-billion pound unfunded commitments this parade of Tory candidates are making, unfunded tax cuts which can only be paid for by swinging cuts again to the National Health Service perhaps, further cuts to the pension or universal credit perhaps, or would lead to more borrowing which at a time when our economy is so fragile, when inflation is out of control, I believe is utterly irresponsible. So you'll see us outlining a positive vision for the future of the country today, focused on growth, prosperity, jobs and living standards.
It may be utterly irresponsible, Jonathan, but all of you politicians from whatever party are in the same boat, I suppose, when you've got the same dilemma. And that dilemma is people will say to you, oh, we don't want to pay as much tax, but they'll also say to you, yes, we want more armed forces, we want social care funded, we want the NHS funded. You know the story. How on earth does anybody balance that? Because is the public in the mood to hear any bad messages? In other words, the tax won't be cut because we can't cut it because we can't pay for anything else.
Well, that's why we in the Labour Party will always be clear with the public. We believe in being prudent with people's money. We believe in sound money. So every commitment we will make, every spending commitment, every penny piece of Labour's programme for government, Labour's manifesto for government, will be costed. That contrasts with these Tory candidates making multi-billion-pound commitments to cut taxes with no idea how they will fund it. I'll tell you how they'll fund it. It means more cuts to the NHS, or it means more decisions which are irresponsible for our economy. So let me give you a couple of examples of what we would do. We're going to cut business rates for businesses because we want more businesses across the country. We would pay for that by a digital transactions tax. We know there was a growing burden of mental health problems in the country. That's not just debilitating for you as the individual. That hampers our economic growth because mental health problems are now the biggest reasons for absence from work. So we would impose VAT on private schools and would use that money to fund an expansion of mental health care. I'm talking today in my speech that I'm making as well about how we're going to support the over 50s, hundreds of thousands of whom have actually left the labour market since the pandemic. We've got one of the slowest employment rates in the G7 since the pandemic. So we're going to put measures in place to support people to get back to work. These are serious, costed plans to grow our economy and spread wealth, and contrast sharply with the irresponsible cuts agenda that we've seen from Tory candidates.
But I suppose at the end of the day, what we're debating, what everybody at home watching and listening is thinking, how does this affect me? And a politician like yourself has to choose, I suppose, between society, doing the right thing for society, or doing the right thing for individual. And my point is this: no matter what people say, at the end of the day, we're all basically selfish. People just worry about themselves, do they not? Unless you want to correct me and tell me differently.
I think there are bonds that hold us together, and we can improve the quality of life. Look, we don't have to have this low pay where going to work, even though you're in work, you're still in poverty and turning up at food banks. We don't have to have so many more people on sickness-related benefits because they can't get the mental health care they deserve. We don't have to have pensioners shivering, pulling up the blankets, and this winter it's going to be worse because the energy bills are going to be going up to around £3,200 per year. That's about a third of a pensioner's income. We can grow our economy, we could spread wealth and raise living standards sustainably while maintaining a stability in the cost of living with our growth plan. That contrasts with what Conservative candidates are promising, which would embed inflation and would see cuts to services. So there is a better way. I want your viewers to feel optimistic, because I'm optimistic that we don't have to do things the way we've been doing. We can do it in a better way for the future of this country. Yeah, so you think Keir Starmer today can step forward and tell everybody, look, it's a win-win situation. We can pay for all the things we want to as the Labour Party, and we can grow the economy at the same time. But then, Jonathan, there are these things. I mean, the obvious things that would work. Fracking. And everybody runs a mile from it. I mean, fracking could solve so many problems for the economy. Where do you stand on that? But we've got a plan. Look, we're going to double offshore wind power. We're going to triple the use of solar. These are the jobs of the future. We're going to invest in them. And by investing in these jobs of the future, not only do we bring the bills down, but not only does it bring the bills down, it creates work across the Midlands and the North, many areas that relied on industries which were ripped out.
But
of
we
the
could
heart
be
of
the
those
new
areas. We're gonna
Dubai,
bring jobs
couldn't
back
we?
to those
We could
areas.
be, everything could be funded, all your social care plans, all your work and pension plans, everything could be solved if we just stuck holes in the ground and fracked.
Well, I'm not sure if your viewers in Lancashire who experienced some fracking for a while would agree with that. But we believe not only will investing in a green future of solar, of wind power, renewables, not only will that bring down bills for everybody, it also creates jobs, and we will insulate homes as well. So we will get people back to work with this green transition, bringing jobs to communities and bringing bills down. That's why I'm optimistic for the future.
Jonathan, always good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Jonathan Ashworth is the Shadow Secretary for Work and Pensions. Can Labour really pull this off today? Can Keir Starmer convince people that he can pay for everything and he can do that by growing the economy?
He's promising a fresh start. We're certainly going to have a sort of fresh era in politics, aren't we? We've had sort of what we saw last week, that final sort of toppling of the gender blocks of Boris Johnson's leadership. And now what's it going to look like? You know, in some ways, the Labour Party have had an almost too good to be true situation with scandal after scandal after scandal. And maybe they haven't been able to capitalise on that on the way they should have done, with so many issues that could have brought down Boris Johnson's leadership up until this point. So a fresh start for the Conservatives, but Labour promising one too. Keir Starmer's making that speech at 10, and we'll bring you the highlights of it here on GB News. Right now, though, 21 minutes past 7.
Let's bring you up to date with what's happening news-wise. More than half of people worry about dangerously long waits for emergency treatment if they fall ill. Around 60% of people surveyed don't believe an ambulance would arrive quickly enough if they needed it, with nearly 2/3 of you thinking you would have to wait to be seen in A&E, which is true.
The parents of 12-year-old Archie Battersby, who suffered brain damage 3 months ago, well, they are set for the latest battle to try and keep him alive. Holly Dance and Paul Battersby are hoping that the High Court will rule he should be kept on life support treatment. Doctors at the Royal London Hospital say they think Archie is brain stem dead and should be disconnected from a ventilator. It's a heart-wrenching story. More on that later.
A new study says flights from Birmingham Airport had the longest delays in Britain last year. Researchers from the Civil Aviation Authority say planes were about 12.5 minutes late taking off. Well, we'd all settle for that if that was the case, wouldn't we? Better late than cancelled. Southampton Airport had the second poorest record, followed by Heathrow. We'll head to the break. We've got Paul Coit, a big weekend, of course, in sport over the weekend, reflecting on that. Paul, right after this.
Looking ahead to today's weather, the UK is going to be dry, sunny for many of us with blue skies and some hot sunshine. Let's take a look at the details. So at lunchtime in the southwest of the UK, there's going to be plenty of blue skies, hot sun. UV levels are going to be really high and temperatures are rising to the mid-20s. It's going to be hot and sunny across London and the southeast of England as we approach midday. Temperatures around 27 Celsius. There's going to be sunshine in abundance across Wales this lunchtime. Perhaps a little low cloud lapping onto north-facing coasts. Here will be about 24 degrees Celsius. In the Midlands, a hot and sunny day. Hardly a cloud in the sky with very high UV levels. Temperatures rising to around 27 Celsius by midday. Wind staying quite light. What about the northeast of England? Plenty of sunshine here, though it may turn quite hazy as high cloud moves in from the north. Feeling warm with temperatures around 26 degrees, a little bit cooler towards the coast. Across Scotland, lots of sunshine here as well. It's going to be quite hazy, though. Winds will be nice and light with temperatures approaching the low 20s. In Northern Ireland, it's going to be dry and sunny heading towards lunchtime. Quite hazy here too, with high cloud. That will move in from the west. Temperatures around 22 degrees at lunchtime. So across the UK, it's going to be dry, hot and sunny for most of us. Rain will arrive in the far northwest later.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest, and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Welcome back. It's 26 minutes past 7. You're with Eamonn and myself, Rosie. Still to come here on Breakfast on GB News. We're going to be live and on your doorstep in Newmarket in Suffolk. Our reporter is asking residents there about the Conservative Party leadership race and how they're coping with the cost of living. That's just before 8.
I'm looking at all the comments coming in. I'm not even sure I can read them out. They're all so divisive, really.
Well, some people haven't been following
libelous
too much.
probably as well.
Deirdre says, I vote for Steve Baker for Prime Minister. Now, if you were watching our programme as it all crumbled for Boris Johnson, Steve Baker came on the programme.
Straight out of the traps, wasn't he?
He was, but now he said no, he's not going for it.
Did he?
Yes, he has. He's done a U-turn.
We were saying to him, basically, well, what's the weather like? Well, I'd like to say I'm running. I'm running.
It was amazing.
No matter what we were talking about, he said, I'm running, I'm being persuaded, my arm's being twisted, I'm going to run. So he's not running now.
He's backing Suella Braverman. Well, Sandra's got in touch morning who says, Penny would be my choice, talking about Penny Mordaunt, who's currently leading our GB News poll on our Twitter account, if you want to have your say. Sandra says, defo not Sunak, backstabber, selfish, not in line with the public.
In your opinion,
Ouch.
Sandra, in your opinion, I mean, who knows? But I tell you, there's worse ones than that. That we're hearing there. I just want to say about this, we were talking about housing, the lack of housing and how so many people are giving up, even trying to save for a deposit. Tony in Luton says, and Tony's absolutely right on this. Good morning, Tony. One of the reasons that people can't find a house to buy is the so-called entrepreneurs that are buying second homes to charge exorbitant rents, which is absolutely true. I live in a street that had 120 family homes. It's now 90% rental, and this is just one of hundreds of streets in my area. So, you know, it is. Who would run the country? Who would want to be PM? Also looking ahead, we're talking about smishing.
Have you been a victim of smishing? It might sound sort of a little bit amusing.
SMS.
But actually,
Phishing.
Form of fraud. It's affecting more than 70% of us in the UK. Well, consumer champion Kate Hardcastle is going to be here with her warning of the week and telling you how to protect yourself from smishing.
Okay. Let's get into what's happening sports-wise today. So let's have a look at the back pages first of all. 7th headline, back of the Daily Mail, this one, back page there. And this is about Wimbledon. Features Djokovic with the trophy. We're going to see these? There we are. There we go. There's Novak Djokovic with the trophy there and a very big smile, of course, with that. Back page of the Times, the image again of Novak Djokovic celebrating his victory. Djokovic has final say. And the Sun says Lewis Hamilton's boss, Toto Wolff, told abusive F1 fans to back off after a fiery Austrian Grand Prix. after some of Max Verstappen's supporters were accused of racist, misogynistic and homophobic behaviour. Goodness me. Could I ask, first of all, Paul's here now to talk about this, and I want to ask the both of you.
Yeah.
Nick Kyrgios, did you grow to like him?
The answer is yes for Rosie, because I can see that she's spending far too much time trying to answer. The head is saying I shouldn't, but I do.
That's actually a loaded question. Both of them haven't painted themselves in the most attractive light of late, whether it's been controversy over coronavirus, over sort of behaviour on the court.
Did you grow to like one of them?
I didn't know who to support while I was watching it, and I was with an army of people, my sisters, where I could say be very candid, and the sort of atmosphere in the room was that Kyrgios was getting the crowd, actually.
Yeah. Well, what did you make?
I've liked him for a while, and I
think
have.
He's established himself as a real character now.
He's a
He creates
maverick.
drama.
He's a maverick. I like a maverick in tennis. I like McEnroe. I like Jimmy Connors. Then we had people like Pete Sampras, who didn't really say too much. He didn't say boo to a goose, and went through very professional about what they do. And in sport generally, there is a lack of mavericks, and I've always liked. You're a fan of him. I know you've had problems with him, but you do like a maverick, don't you?
Yeah.
As a maverick yourself, you do like a bit of a maverick.
Enfant terrible, yeah.
Yeah.
But, Kyrgios at the start of this tournament, he was getting on my threepennies.
I know he was.
Yeah.
I know he was.
But really, by the end of it, I thought, you're just beating yourself here, son, because every time he complained, he wasn't concentrating on his game. But it was a good game, and I thought the banter between the two of them afterwards the respect shown by Djokovic towards Kyrgios means that I think we'll see a lot more of him.
Well, you made a really good point, and as far as Kyrgios is concerned, he's battling two people. He's battling Novak Djokovic, the greatest tennis player arguably in the world at the moment, if not ever, and also he's battling himself. Now, there's a lot of great sports people who, again, are mavericks, and it's often said if they take that out of their game, they wouldn't be as successful as they are.
Yeah.
You get footballers that might kick a little bit, might create, and they say, well, if that comes out of their game, they won't be the same. But I think in Kyrgios's case, if he did drop it, I think it would actually help him because it seemed the first set, when everything was going very well for him, then he starts shouting. He was shouting at the box, where he had his people, he had his coach and family.
Yeah.
I don't know whether he's actually shouting at them and having a go at them. I think it's himself, and I think he's one of these people that it's what goes into his brain, he verbalises it immediately, and it's almost a release, and no matter what it is, seems to come out. There's obviously... there's going to be swear words, and I think little George probably should have had some ear mufflers. Probably they should have had special Wimbledon.
Let's talk about little George. This is Prince George we're talking
there's
about.
A gorgeous photograph of him on the front page of the Daily Telegraph, looking a little bit warm.
Yes, it's a lot. Tennis is a long game.
Yeah, but the thing is, the criticism from many of you has been, well, should he really... How old is he? 7 or something?
I don't know how old he is.
But he's, shirt and tie, blazer.
Yeah.
Was it all just a wee bit too formal for a lad who's basically a baby, basically?
Yeah.
And that's a lot of people were just making that comment there about that. His mother, of course, just was exquisite, the way she looks. Do you not think so?
Well, as always.
Yeah, as always, you're right.
Is there really a problem with him going to Wimbledon and watching? I mean, that's an amazing thing
No,
to
it's
do.
not the watching, it's the way he was dressed, the outfit, yeah.
But, school uniforms are very similar. And,
It's not school day, it's a Sunday.
I know, but he's going to the Wimbledon final. He is meeting Novak Djokovic.
So what would you
I don't think he'd be saying, listen, Dad, I'd rather wear a tracksuit.
He could have worn the blazer and a polo shirt under it or something like that.
Or maybe not the tie.
Maybe a nice neckerchief, Eamonn, would have been nice. But you know what? Did you see when Novak Djokovic was speaking to him afterwards? And this is when they go and they meet them. And I really like that. And the thing is, this is the one that's winning me over. He's actually Novak Djokovic. And we spoke in January about the Australian Open. And I wasn't a fan. I didn't like the way he was. I still thought he really wanted to be Federer as a personality, but he just doesn't have that. He just doesn't seem to have that nice guy thing that's going for him. Every now and again, you'll see the real Novak. And I think, as far as playing tennis and also the way he handled himself at Wimbledon this year, I think he's played a blinder. I think he's been perfect. I thought the speech was brilliant. The way he handled Nick Kyrgios and that whole situation, I thought he's been absolutely magnificent.
I thought the speech was brilliant, and I identified a lot with it when, growing up in Belfast, and I thought, I'd never get to Wembley, I'd never get to the Grand National, I'd never get to Wimbledon, whatever.
Sure.
You saw these things on television, and you aspired to that, and you dreamt of that, and I got to cover all of these things as a reporter in my life, as I'm sure you have as well, and that's amazing. And I think now I feel sorry for today's youngsters because there isn't the same concentrated, because all these programmes were on terrestrial television.
Of course.
So, we all got to see it, we all got to dream, whether you live in Sheffield or whether you live in Plymouth or whatever, you thought, maybe one day I could get there. And I thought he told that, I thought he told that story very, very well.
If we look at Novak now and growing up in Serbia, and he talked about his family having a restaurant and he wanted to pick up a tennis racket, and how he looks now, I thought it'd be nice to compare and contrast, because people change a lot. So if we look at a picture, for example, we've got a picture of him from 2011. Look, there he is there. That's when he won his first Wimbledon title.
Who's that hunk? Who's that hunk?
That's Novak there in Belgrade, 2011.
If you're listening on the radio,
that was just before he won his first Wimbledon title.
There's a lot of upper thigh on display there.
It was 2011.
Well,
people were wearing shorter shorts
let's just
in those
say
days,
the caption is sitting exactly in the right place, I would have thought. But
I don't know about V for victory, though. That is a bit of a worry, isn't it, right over there? But there he is. I think he looks great there. But he has changed a little bit, but the playing style is all very similar.
Oh, thank you for embarrassing me there. Well, I couldn't help it. If only I had the talent to go with the looks, it would have been.
The look was there.
So I was about 20 there.
So if you're listening on the radio, check out Eamonn's Instagram account for the photograph that's just will cause some laughs from this side of the table, but maybe some blushing from over.
What?
Did someone ask you to get into that pose, or was it?
No, I just lost a match, and I was really huffy, and I was sitting, and somebody snapped a picture of me at the time, and basically my looking at the camera is basically telling them where to go. Really,
who was it? Lou Hoge you just lost to. Here's one for the kids.
Oh, very good, very good. But if you're of a nervous disposition, it is a picture of simmering sexuality.
Excellent. Oh, yeah.
And that's on the Eamonn Holmes Instagram account. Have you done now?
You know what? It's just like Nick Kyrgios is nothing compared to what we've just seen there, haven't we? This is times you really want to be listening to us on the radio, not on the TV. But there we go. No.
God bless.
I'm done.
Thanks, Paul. Thank you very much indeed.
Oh, don't go anywhere. We're going to go through the papers with Chris Akabusi and Emily Carver after this.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know. The latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Well, welcome back. It is 20 to 8. You're with GB News. This is Eamonn and Rosie keeping you company for the next couple of hours. And time to go through the papers. Joining us this morning is Olympian Chris Akabusi and columnist for Conservative Home, Emily Carver. Emily, let's start with you because the news of the day, there's now 11 candidates running to be leader of the Conservative Party. All of them, so far, do seem to have, according to the Times, the same policy idea when it comes to the Rwanda policy.
Yes, so they all want to cut taxes, apart from Rishi Sunak, and it seems they all want to continue with the Rwanda deportation plan. I find that slightly hard to believe. I wouldn't have thought that every single one of the candidates that have already come out as contenders would agree with the policy. But I imagine they've looked at the polls of Tory members and found that they're overwhelmingly in support of this policy going ahead. It says here in this report that 3 in 4 voters who backed the party at the last election support the policy and only 10% oppose it. So they're just listening to those who may be voting in the future, presumably. However, there is a little bit of differentiation with Suella Braverman. She is, of course, the Attorney General, and she said yesterday that she wants to leave the European Court of Human Rights. And that, of course, is one of the reasons why the Rwanda deportations have been so difficult to get off the ground because of the court in Europe. So that's something that will appeal to lots of Conservative voters, I imagine.
There's so much noise, isn't there, and quite a bit of bluster and backstabbing right now. But if you could define kind of what the key issues were that these candidates are going to be campaigning on, is this one of them?
I think it probably will be. I think for a lot of Conservative voters, they are fed up of seeing tens of thousands of people crossing the channel and they want something done. Whether they think this Rwanda policy is the way forward, I'm not so sure, but they want something to be done, and this is the only thing that's being presented to them. But it'll be tax cuts, inflation, cost of living. There's a bit of the anti-woke stuff as well going on.
Right, Chris, let's go to the Times. This is page 22, and this talks about working from home.
Yeah.
And actually, it's surprising, it fuels cyberbullying, they say.
Yeah, in the last year, there's been a 44% increase. It says figures show that employment tribunal cases involving bullying allegations have more than doubled in 4 years, rising by 44% in the past year alone. Now, when I think of the term bullying, I do think of physical and emotional abuse, primarily physical, but also clearly emotional abuse. But apparently, the cyberbullying, there's a unique configuration where it's easier to send people to Coventry. That's what we used to call it when you didn't
outsource.
Yeah. Have side room chats on your apps talking about somebody, so he or she doesn't know that we're all talking about you, and then cutting remarks that you don't have an opportunity to respond to because you're silenced. So these are some of the ideas that are happening with cyberbullying. Now, the other side that's given is that there is a digital trail, so the legal profession can actually do something about it because you're captured either in a message room. Someone can say, well, here's a Photoshop of what happened in the message room.
Whatever happened to the days where an employer could actually say to the employee, you're not very good, and here's what you need to do to improve, and if you don't improve, we'll probably get rid of you or whatever. I mean, it is absolutely ridiculous, mate. I'm sorry that you cannot say boo to a goose, really. Yeah. And I would say, why would anybody even take on employees? Why? Because you cannot say anything to them. The amount, I mean, through the years...
I think that might be a different issue. I think the hypersensitivity of people not getting feedback from their boss is different to colleagues, contemporaries bullying them on maybe an online chat or deliberately...
I'm not saying that doesn't exist, and I'm not saying...
And it does feel passive aggression. And that's when it comes out in these messaging groups.
Yes, yeah.
Because if you can't say something directly to your employee or to your colleague, you'll just essentially... sorry, I don't know what the word to use apart from something that's rude, but talking behind their back on Slack or Teams messaging.
So you're not necessarily against the message or what's said, it's the way it's said. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I think it's all a bit sneaky, isn't it? You're sort of like...
It's sort of like the... criticism. I mean, you know when people get
I much prefer to the point.
Yeah. You know people, though, who get any sort of criticism and they realise they're just rubbish, they immediately run to human resources and saying, I'm being bullied or I'm being discriminated against or whatever it happens to be. I just despair.
See, I think that we've got a generation of people who were brought up by our generation who were encouraged to say to a child who coloured outside the lines, oh, how pretty that is, rather than saying, no, mate, you're outside the lines.
Yes.
So once you've had, all your ugly paintings on the fridge and told it's good, quite clearly you can't stand to be told by your boss that that's bad.
Yeah.
Whereas in a sporting context, you have to have crucial conversations. You can't get in a relay team because you're a nice fella and you've got a lovely dress.
Emily, do you think this is fair to the generation that's being discussed, that all of them, when they get criticism, they just crumble?
They've
got a thicker skin than that.
I think too many of them do.
I don't think it's that we crumble. I think it's more that there's a fear of all the possible consequences on the employer or the person working if, for example, they're accused of bullying. Because of HR, which protects people's rights, of course, and protects them in the workplace, it also does create an environment where people are worried that if they do criticise someone rightly, and with just cause, they may then suffer consequences in terms of, they might be told that they're a bully or that they themselves need to leave.
I mean, I don't like to be criticised. I mean, if I, and I want to get things right, and I might go into my shell. I wouldn't complain about it. I might go into my shell if I feel that I'm being criticised. But then I'll think, well, what can I do about it? Can I actually use that to get better and improve, or do I go somewhere else?
But also, Chris, I mean, you and I would be off a strong enough mind where if we had criticism that you would probably be able to say to someone, oh, what do you mean, back that up? You would challenge it, or you could challenge it.
Yeah.
But not everybody's like that.
Hey, we're not weaklings over this side.
No,
but I know Chris, I don't know you.
I believe in positive reinforcement.
Mm-hmm.
Right, I think there should almost be a hunger for feedback, because then you can improve.
Yes, a lot of bosses don't give feedback.
Yeah.
It's disastrous.
Emily, let's look at this situation in Sri Lanka. My goodness me. I mean, I think inflation there's 50%.
Yes.
It's running at 50%. I mean, what a mess. And they've now got to go to the World Bank and whatever. What happened in Sri Lanka and what is happening now?
Now, I chose this story because I think it's good for us to have a bit of perspective over our situation in this country. Sri Lanka, it's facing its worst financial crisis in 70 years. Of course, a lot of countries around the world are facing similar pressures, inflation, etc., etc. I don't know if you saw the pictures and the videos over the weekend, but protesters have stormed the president's palace. They've been diving into the pool. They've essentially been having a party. And this is to demonstrate there's an us and them situation. These leaders are presiding over this inflation at the same time as they're having all these excesses of wealth, and protesters have had enough, and they've gone in and they've stormed the palace, which one might think is slightly extreme. There they are using the gym and the workout kit, dancing around, etc., etc. And what's going on in Sri Lanka really is quite shocking. Now, similarly, here, the Prime Minister and the President have said that they will resign, but these protesters aren't convinced that they actually will.
Yeah.
So it's all a bit of a massive chaos.
And what I liked about that piece that you just brought there, Emily, is the idea that we are in a global financial crisis. We've panicked and we've got rid of our Prime Minister because of energy crisis, economic crisis. But there's a global supply chain problem. There's a global crisis because we locked down for 2.5 years and everybody went down to zero. And so we need to be honest. This is not just about, about the UK government doing things wrong. It is a global issue that we've got to try and get right. Okay. And Sri Lanka have decided to storm the palace and kick the boys out.
Which is one way of handling it.
Did either of you watch Wimbledon yesterday?
I caught the last about half an hour. It was brilliant.
That was the best bit.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I wanted Nick Kyrgios to win, I must admit. Fiery.
One of the stories there was about Prince George. It was a charming young man. Already looks very, very royal. And the poor fella is trussed up like a chicken with all of his tie right up there. And quite clearly he's getting up. So the paper talks about Prince George sweltering and getting a little bit hot and bothered. But clearly, I mean, it's a fine young man. And
he still managed to have a few picks of his nose.
Well, he's a young man. He's a young man. But I just laughed at the idea that, yeah, of course, the poor guy is absolutely sweltering. But did you see him? I saw him get the cup from...
yes.
Yes.
And what was really funny, he got the cup and, oh, this is really, really nice. Oh, Mum, can you... And I mean...
It was heavy.
Yeah, Mum.
And the lid was going to fall off.
I went to Mum, you know what I mean? So she's a...
Good. OK.
Hey, that's so nice.
We're going out and about, guys. We say thank you to Emily and Chris, and they're going to be back in about 40 minutes' time. Now it's time for On Your Doorstep.
I think we're going to come to On
Let's
Your Doorstep
go to On Your
shortly.
Doorstep.
I think as soon as we can, we're going to go to Ed Crawford in the meantime. Oh, we now have Ed Crawford. Is he there? Very good morning to you, Ed. How are you doing? We believe you're in the horse racing town of Newmarket in Suffolk. Take it away.
I am, yes. So I am in the equestrian capital, the horse racing capital of East Anglia, or Suffolk, you could say. Now, often on the trains in East Anglia, you'll see people dressed up in a very smart, lovely way, and they're often on the way to Newmarket races. Now, Newmarket, like many other towns and cities across the country, is struggling with the cost of living crisis. Independent businesses are really feeling the pinch, and that's why on today's On Your Doorstep, I've come to this independent business, Victoria Coffee, and I'm here to speak to the owner to find out what kind of challenges she is facing in terms of cost of living crisis. So let's go on in. Hello. Oh, hello. Hi.
Hello.
Could you introduce yourself to the camera, please?
Yes, I'm Vicky and I own Victoria Coffee Shop in Newmarket.
Fantastic. So I understand that you have won Independent Business of the Year 2022. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, so this happened about 3 weeks ago. I was nominated by local businesses and then by the Newmarket in general. So yes, very high accolade. So Independent Business of the Year, which is collectively as the shop. And then I also won individually, or not won, highly commended Business Leader of the Year. So very pleased with both awards.
Gosh, well, that is quite some accolades. Now, we're talking about independent businesses. We're talking about some of the challenges. You opened your business 2-3 weeks into the pandemic.
Yes.
But fortunately, I noticed you've got a lovely outside area. Can you tell me, how was the pandemic for you and how has business progressed since then?
Yes, you're quite right. We opened 2 weeks before, 7th of March, and then 2 weeks later had to shut the doors, which was heartbreaking as a new venture, a new business. But I didn't let it get to me. I just sort of ploughed through it, really. When we opened our doors, like with everyone, we just started slowly. We went from takeaways, and then people were outside, and then eventually inside, and then outside again. We were very lucky. The local community really got around and behind us. They saw the work that we'd put in and they started coming and giving us support. It was a really lovely time, actually. It was a hard time, but afterwards people really collectively coming and supporting us, and that was lovely to see in a community.
Well, it seems like this coffee shop's almost taken a role as almost a hub for the community. So as a coffee shop, some people term it as you are an affordable luxury. But can you tell me, what are some of the challenges that you are facing as a business?
Yes, I think, well, let's take this morning, for instance. So I've hired another couple of chefs quite recently. We're getting busier. We're coming into our summer months. And my head chef yesterday phoned me last night and said, unfortunately, just tested positive. So that means he's probably out for the next 5 days. Thankfully, he's feeling okay. But it does mean that he's not in the workplace. So that's one challenge, just on a daily basis. Looking at the numbers at the moment, I know that there's quite a few. It could be that another member of my workforce goes down. I think that's sort of an immediate crisis at the moment. Moving forward into the winter, we're going to have the whole crisis over fuel and energy going up, people's wages staying plateaued, but food going up. So it's, are they going to be coming out? So I've got all of this going on as well.
So it seems like, as an independent business owner, it's a constant balance between paying the bills, paying the staff, but also yes, your costs are going up, but you can't keep raising the prices on the customer. Do you find there's a tricky balance between providing an affordable service and and the rising cost of living?
Yes, most definitely. I mean, our prices are as they are. We have them everywhere. My bread goes up, you know, it's been going up twice within the last sort of probably 2 months. My milk has just jumped up, as with everybody's, and that makes quite a difference with the amount of coffees that we go through. So, yes, all of my costs are going up, and we haven't actually sort of put these up for quite a while. But I am finding, or I'm hoping, that people with an affordable luxury will come out, have a coffee, meet a friend, have a cake, maybe a little bite to eat, and that will be their luxury. And they still carry on doing that because I think it's quite good for their mind and to be outside and to meet people. And maybe they'll sort of cut back elsewhere, where I don't know, but maybe that is how that it'll go.
It is a very challenging situation. I think you're in a very good position because you've got a solid business, you've got a great team here. I guess my final question would be, how much have you seen your electricity rise? And are you worried in the winter it's going to get astronomical?
Yes, I mean, I set my prices actually for this year for my energy, just in case that it did double, and it has doubled. So from what I was paying for 2 units last year, here's about sort of 50-60%, which is a huge increase on units like this. I've got double ovens going, I've got griddles going, I've got air conditioning units. I've also got an air purifier going as well for the winter when we shut the door to sort of take all the germs. I've got all the lighting going. I'm keeping the door open at the moment so that there is general air passing through, especially at this time, but also running an air conditioning unit, which isn't conducive, but I think that is the best way at the moment. So, yes, energy prices are really going up. It's not going to be a winter that I don't think anyone's going to look forward to.
Yeah, no dark winters ahead. But it seems you are weathering the storm of the challenges to independent businesses. Now, looking at all these cakes, I know you've got a lovely coffee machine over there. I think we're going to have to hand back to the studio in a minute because, you know, I know you can't smell that at home, but there's some sausage rolls here and they're pretty fantastic.
Stop it.
So
Stop it.
we're going to hand off and I'm going to have some breakfast.
Oh, are you indeed?
Do you know, we hadn't had any nonsense about being hungry yet this
until
morning.
he popped
until
up.
now.
Yeah, there you go. Ed, but looks lovely.
Sorry,
and thanks,
guys.
Victoria, for letting her into her shop there. It's very interesting to hear what she had to say. Have you ever been to Newmarket?
I've never been.
Beautiful place. But, of course, it's all the race course is the big factor around there. So in the streets, there's a lot of horse poo and things, which is a nice horse poo smell. It's nice. Whereas dog poo doesn't smell nice, especially if you stand in it. But the thing is, we're going to talk about this later because there is a council in England which will fine you £100 if you, as a dog owner, are not carrying a poo bag. Now, there's a lot of closeness in the doggy community where people help each other out.
And share.
So you walk up to people and say, "Do you have a dog? Do you have a poo bag? Sorry, I've forgotten mine." And I've never been let down. Never been let down.
The thing I really don't like about taking a dog for a walk is then later on, maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, when you put the same jacket on, and in the pocket, maybe you're getting your phone or your lip balm, there's dog treats and the poo bags.
Well, as long as the poo's not in the bag, you're all right.
It's very ungraceful when you take your phone out and it comes alongside a poo bag.
Well, they're necessary
move on.
things. The only thing I can't stand about the poo bags are the people who fill them and then throw them on trees.
What?
They're like decorations on trees.
Oh, they leave them so they can pick them up on their way back, on their walk?
No. It's like a decorated tree, like a Christmas tree. Yes. Back me up on this, viewers and listeners. And why people do that. And then, of course, you don't see them when the leaves are on the tree, but then come autumn and winter, they just hang there. They're just there all over the place. There are sick people in this world, believe me. Back after this, don't go away. We'll be talking politics after this.
Looking ahead to today's weather, the UK is going to be dry, sunny for many of us with blue skies and some hot sunshine. Let's take a look at the details. So at lunchtime in the southwest of the UK, there's going to be plenty of blue skies, hot sun. UV levels are going to be really high and temperatures are rising to the mid-20s. It's going to be hot and sunny across London and the southeast of England as we approach midday. Temperatures around 27 Celsius. There's going to be sunshine in abundance across Wales this lunchtime. Perhaps a little low cloud lapping onto north-facing coasts. Here will be about 24 degrees Celsius. In the Midlands, a hot and sunny day. Hardly a cloud in the sky with very high UV levels. Temperatures rising to around 27 Celsius by midday. Wind staying quite light. What about the northeast of England? Plenty of sunshine here, though it may turn quite hazy as high cloud moves in from the north. Feeling warm with temperatures around 26 degrees, a little bit cooler towards the coast. Across Scotland, lots of sunshine here as well. It's going to be quite hazy though. Winds will be nice and light with temperatures approaching the low 20s. In Northern Ireland, it's going to be dry and sunny heading towards lunchtime. Quite hazy here too with high cloud. That will move in from the west. Temperatures around 22 degrees at lunchtime. So across the UK, it's going to be dry, hot and sunny for most of us. Rain will arrive in the far northwest later.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know. The latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We're trying to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
The Foreign Secretary joins the race for the Conservative leadership.
A very good morning. It's 8 o'clock on Monday, the 11th of July. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Rosie Wright.
Leading the news on this Monday morning, the Foreign Secretary, Liz Truss, has joined 10 other candidates in the race to become the next Conservative leader and Prime Minister. She launched her bid with a promise to cut taxes from day one.
The former Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, has denied claims that he's in contact with Dominic Cummings after the former number 10 advisor launched a series of attacks on Conservative leadership candidates.
And Novak Djokovic has beaten Australia's Nick Kyrgios to win his fourth consecutive men's singles title. Post-match, Kyrgios hailed his opponent as a tennis god.
Well, you can join any of the discussions. You can email us gbviews@gbnews.uk or drop us a tweet. We've got a poll there out as well for who you think should be the next leader of the Conservative Party at GB News.
Never mind that. The important thing has been what people think of my suit this morning. Anne, good morning. God bless you, Anne. MPs all turn out in dark, boring suits. It's summer, for goodness sake. How smart does Eamonn look this morning?
Are you reading your own compliments, Eamonn? Would you like me to do it instead?
Well, yes, it might make me feel less embarrassed. Yes, go ahead there.
Well, we've got... Shaq says, morning all, tell Eamonn he's looking dapper and cool today.
Oh.
And Philip says, well, no, here, it's a small bit of feedback.
Yes.
You said earlier you liked feedback. Nice suit, but why so many buttons on the sleeve?
Is there?
Is that too many?
Is that too many? How many is there? Oh, so now they all have opinions.
Our directors
They all
just said
have
that's too many,
opinions.
yeah.
Yeah, where do you do your shopping? 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, how many are there? 5?
Well, where did you learn to count?
2, 3, 4, 5. 5. I can't. There are so many of them. But
Maybe they just look more visible because of the contrast.
could be. But maybe there are a lot. I'll put the complaint into my tailor, who I know watches this very programme today. Jeff, too many buttons or not? I know you'll have an answer. Text me, tell me, so we can let the viewers know on that. The top story this morning is that the Foreign Secretary Liz Truss has entered the race to become the next Prime Minister.
Well, she enters a field that now includes 11 candidates. We've got in that list the former Health Secretary, he's run before, Jeremy Hunt, the Transport Secretary, Grant Shapps, but also the key rival, we think, and the pollsters that we've spoken to this morning and the betting men also agree, former Chancellor Rishi Sunak, who's sort of at this point, well, certainly in terms of people who've lent their support, is leading the pack.
Well, Truss is front page of the Daily Telegraph today. I'm just looking, the headline is, Truss vows I would cut taxes from day one. So she said it was time to get back to Conservative values, and this is the sort of thing she's talking about here. But this is the big dilemma. The only one of these candidates, the only one, that's 10, who would say they would cut tax, and Rishi Sunak saying, I can't cut tax. That's interesting. That either means he doesn't get elected or he's serving up a harsh truth, you know, a bitter pill to swallow for us all, that's the reality.
It's really the opposite narrative to that of Liz Truss. We can find out a bit more because joining us now from Westminster, we can head there live, is our political correspondent, Tom Harwood. Tom, a very good morning to you. Not a surprise that Liz Truss has said, you know, count me in as well.
No, not a surprise. We've been expecting Liz Truss to be one of the leading contenders for quite some time now, always high up in the betting markets in terms of who might be the next Prime Minister. And indeed, we knew that she flew back early last week from Indonesia, no doubt setting up her campaign upon the resignation of the Prime Minister. This is someone who has run a number of government departments, 6, I believe, over her long time in Cabinet, and so is really pitching on being that candidate of experience, to the extent that many of these candidates in this race so far have not been in Cabinet for that long. Of course, Rishi Sunak has been Chancellor for a couple of years, but before then held no big job in Cabinet. You've got other contenders, everyone from Kemi Badenoch to Tom Tugendhat, who haven't had the greatest experience in government. Tom Tugendhat, of course, never been in Cabinet before. So it's a really interesting race with a very diverse field there. Liz Truss really pitching on being a tax cutter, but also one with experience. But of course, we've seen so many other people dive into this race. We've got 11 or 12 candidates, depending on how we count it. 11 formally declared. We're seeing whether Priti Patel will throw her hat into the ring as well, which would take the numbers up to 12. Last night, a surprise contender, Raymond Chishti, someone who many people, even in Westminster, hadn't heard of, throwing his hat into the ring. Although we are hearing this morning that this may be a candidates list that is whittled down fairly quickly. Why is that? Because, of course, the way the Tories elect their leader is that MPs whittle those numbers down until they get to the final 2 that then go out to the Tory party membership in the country to get voted on to then become Prime Minister. And there's only 2 weeks in which the Tory party can whittle those candidates down because, of course, parliamentary recess begins next Thursday. So in order to whittle those candidates down, there's going to be a quick succession of votes, and we're going to be hearing a little bit later today, we hear, that the 1922 committee will be setting out the rules for this contest. Big speculation that the threshold by which a member of parliament may stand to be leader, may get on that initial ballot, will be raised. Last time it was 10 MPs. It could be as many as 36 MPs now to get nominated. That's 10% of the Conservative Parliamentary Party. And so for some of those candidates, that's going to be a pretty high bar to reach in order to get on that ballot paper.
Tom, thank you very much indeed. We've been running our own poll here on the programme to hear what you think and who should be the next Conservative leader and Prime Minister.
We also want to know what issues matter to you the most. Tax seems to be one of the things they're all really campaigning on, but what do you want to hear about? Have your say by voting on our Twitter page so far.
Yeah, and just looking at this, so far the majority of you definitely by far and away voting for Penny Mordaunt. She's currently the Minister of State for Trade Policy. So there you are. She leads our GB News poll on this one. The issue that matters most to you, 82% of you, is the cost of living. So you can head to @GB News on Twitter to have your say about this. Interesting.
Particularly interesting. And as Tom just laid out, we've got a turbulent 2 weeks ahead. By this evening, that list of 11 candidates might grow, but quite quickly it'll be whittled down. So it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out.
Yeah. Some consumer news now. And according to the Citizens Advice Bureau, over 3/4 of you have been approached by scammers this year alone.
That's a 14% rise from last year. The data comes as England battles one of the worst cost of living crises in decades. Now, the charity estimates that scammers have targeted 41 million of adults in Britain this year already.
Well, let's go to Kate Hardcastle, our consumer and retail expert. Kate, we could already, I showed my phone to Rosie this morning, and I can't tell the difference between, I'm worried, as many people are, between what is legitimate and what is not legitimate. So you particularly want to concentrate on what's called smishing. What is smishing?
Well, you had a good guess this morning, I was hearing. It is the idea of SMS, so text message phishing. And the idea is that we are receiving more and more of these messages now. They're generally, the top stat in all of this is that they're related to parcel deliveries. And it will say something along the lines of, you do a parcel, but you have a surplus to pay. Please click this link to pay it, to make sure your parcel's not delayed or we don't return it. And there does tend to be sometimes be a threat in the scam ones that make you feel like you've got to act very quickly. People go into panic mode. Now, the great thing about your viewers is that when I do these pieces each week, they say, well, yeah, we knew about that, Kate, we knew about that, Kate. And that's fantastic, because I think a lot of this is about trying to make sure those people who are vulnerable do know, pass on the message. Because whilst it's affected so many of us, 79% of people generally say, when we get one of these messages, we will look at it twice. That means that 21% are sat there reacting to it and losing masses of savings, getting the fact that their bank accounts have been entered into. These are high-risk situations in terms of the fraud that we're seeing.
Is there anything we can better do to protect our data so that we don't end up with our phone number, our email address on the list of the people the fraudsters are sending it to?
Right. So, yes, there's a lot we can do in terms of protecting ourselves online, not having the same password, not having generic passwords, easy to guess passwords, etc. But particularly this trend, the smishing trend, is a text message to your phone. And the way that the fraudsters are doing it is literally just like a lottery. They're just entering new numbers. So the Consumer Rights Agency, which had some brand new mobile phones, numbers that had never been anywhere at all, with some typical numbers, and they monitored how many of these messages they got. And it was just a free-for-all because these numbers had never been displayed anywhere. So you can imagine that the fraudsters are just putting the numbers in, they're coming up on a lottery look, and then we're getting these messages. And because so many of us are using online deliveries and shopping now, it's likely we're going to be receiving the parcels. The very best thing to do is ignore it. If someone's really wanting to get hold of you and they want to deliver that parcel, they're going to get hold of you by other means. Or indeed, contact the retailer you bought it from if you're nervous.
Funny you talking about getting text messages while he was watching this very programme. Philip Hoy in Bishop Stortford, who we'll go to right now. Philip, you got a phone call watching this very programme, my friend. Good morning to you. We're the real deal. We're not smishers. We're not false here. So what can you tell us about what happened to you?
Well, it was interesting. I was watching the programme and the day it was talking about fraud. And at that point, my mobile rang and this automated voice came on and it said that this is your credit card supplier and they were my MasterCard or Visa credit card company, and that £900 had been taken from my account, and if I wanted it to stop, I should push button 1. Well, I wouldn't have believed it anyway, but when they said, we are your Visa or MasterCard supplier, I thought, you're one or the other, so you must know who you are. And so I hung up, blocked the number, and that's it. But that's not the first time this has happened to me.
Well, Kate's still in the studio with us. That was the right thing to do, wasn't it?
Absolutely the right thing to do. Anything from your bank, financial institution, just hang up. Absolutely hang up. Contact your bank if you want the thoroughness, because unfortunately, that sounds like perhaps not one of the worst calls I've heard of. Some of them are replicating the bank number from your bank to call from, which means then if you even check it against the back of your bank card, you still think that, yeah, of course this is valid. I can see the number in front of me.
How do they get all this? How do they get all this? I mean, I am genuinely fed up. If I inquire about something, I want to subscribe to something, whatever, then it says, put your email address in, put your phone number in, you want to say, go and take a run and jump. Why do they need all this stuff? I think government should do something and say, no, you don't have to give all this stuff over.
The banks and institutions need to do a lot more, as do the parcel delivery companies, in fact, everyone, to make sure that we as consumers are not vulnerable. We have much too much to be getting on with our lives. You only need to be distracted, and that's it. All of a sudden you start going down a certain route, maybe putting those
but you'd be panicked. I mean, you take that Philip situation, or someone says 900 quid's coming out of your account. I mean, he was wise enough that he knew MasterCard and Visa were two different things. But you're thinking, if you want this to stop, press now or do whatever, and you think, yeah, of course I want it to stop.
It's panic mode. They're working on that theory. So things to look out, bad grammar, bad spelling, needing to ask you information that institution should already know. Messages like Visa or MasterCard, of course, your provider would know which particular card you have. But at the same time, add in there children screaming at you or a bit of distraction or you're a bit concerned about something. People do tend to go out of the logical thinking sometimes and react. So we've got to make sure people understand you're within your rights. Just hang up.
OK, well, let's find out what else has happened in Philip's life. So there's another day, Philip. You go into the petrol station and tell us what happened next.
OK, well, I used to have a fuel card, but I was nowhere near the garage that I had to use it in. So I used a credit card. Now, this particular credit card I hadn't used before. It just happened to be one that I carried as a spare in the car. So I went in, filled up, and a few days later, I got a phone call. It was an early Saturday morning, and it was the credit card company. And they said, your credit card's just been used in the last hour in New York and Seattle. Now, you will know
in New York, not York. In New York and Seattle.
No, New York in the United States and Seattle within an hour. Now, the fastest plane in the world couldn't get to Seattle within an hour. So they were good. They suspected it was a fraud. I said, absolutely. But the main thing was, because I'd only ever used this credit card once, I could pinpoint the exact garage that this was used in. And I said, OK, well, that's obviously where they cloned it. So I never did hear back, but they refunded the money because it was all high-end clothing. And as you can possibly tell, I'm not a high-end clothing person. So,
well, I think that looks... You look perfectly smart for breakfast. Let's just find out from Kate, what do you think's happened in that scenario then?
I think absolutely what we heard, that information has been passed on, either knowingly or unknowingly, by the receiver of the card details. And it's unfortunately been replicated. The very same happened to me. And you'd think it wouldn't happen to us, the experts, but it did. I was in Paris. I used my card. I have lots of protection on it. And 14 transactions went through. And the reason it was 14 was they were under a certain amount so that the fraud limit didn't get detected. And you have a big fight on your hands then. You as the consumer are having to work with your financial institution to organise it. So you've got to stay vigilant. It's so important.
But what could Philip have done to prevent that happening?
Very little by the sounds of it. It's going to happen. It's going to happen more. We have got great information coming through from the FCA that organisations are doing so much more to use technology to try and protect us as consumers. I think we also have to be active too, reporting it. If you get one of these text messages that you think is a scam, you can actually forward it to your phone provider and you can report it so they can then start getting the information through that you're receiving it. And all you do for that is you forward it to 7726. 7726, which it spells spam, and that will then forward to your phone provider and they will then start being able to block it. The more information they get, the more they can act on our behalf.
Yeah. Interesting. Philip, anything you'd like to ask Kate while you've got the benefit of her experience here? Anything you'd like to share with her?
absolutely. If I can tell you one more thing. On my internet service provider, which, I'm not having a go at them because they're very good and everything, but on a daily basis, for well over a year now, I've been receiving emails telling me that my account's about to be closed unless I push this, accept the new protocol. This has been going on and on and on. And I contacted them and spoke to their security people. And luckily, because I have certain software on my machine, I can see who's actually sending it because they always purport to come from my internet service provider. And 99% of people are going to believe it really is them. And some of the messages, we've changed the system. You have to accept the new terms and conditions, things like that. I know none of them are real. So, and for over a year now, I've just been sending them onto their security system. Never heard anything back, unfortunately, but I would think that a lot of people are going to get scammed by that. And I don't know how to stop it. You look at these messages, they're not real. But the problem is you now get to the point where, and I did say this to my service provider, what happens when you send me a real message? I'm not going to believe it because I believe nothing now. Yeah. I don't know how you get around it.
I believe nothing. There you are. That's maybe that's the safest way to be, is it?
Well done, Philip. You've been really proactive there. Just junk and block that email address. Don't even accept it anymore. Unfortunately, in terms of your provider, yes, it's going to take time for them to get on top of that by the sounds of it. You get in contact and be in control. But guys, with the cost of living crisis we've got right now, no one could afford to lose a penny that they don't have, to lose. So we've got to do all we can to make sure people feel comfortable and take control.
And Instagram should take control, and Twitter should take control, and Facebook and everyone else. I mean, the amount of people who are being hassled by Bitcoin operators and messages, and it must be an automatic thing that happens. What are these called? Bots or something? Yeah. But do you get those?
I get a lot. As soon as you look at a lot of financial reporting, as I do, they see you as a target. Yeah.
Well, I don't look at financial reporting, and
really?
I'm plagued with them.
Maybe they just think you're very wealthy, Alf.
Well, how wrong can they be? There we go, guys. Thanks very much indeed. Philip, great hearing from you from Bishop Stortford. What's your weather like there today?
Beautiful. In fact, we've had a lot of problem getting the signal because the sun's so bright, we've had to put curtains up.
Oh, gosh. Well, good, man. You look lovely. Thank you very much indeed. We'll leave it there. GB News viewer and breakfast viewer, Philip Hoy. Glad to have him on board. Thank you, Kate.
You did a great job, didn't I? Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, let's bring you up to speed with what else is happening today at 8:20. More than half of us are worrying about dangerously long waits for emergency treatment if we fall ill. Around 60% of people surveyed don't believe an ambulance would arrive quickly if they needed one, with nearly 2/3 of us thinking we'd have to wait, or we'd definitely have to wait, to be seen in A&E.
The parents of 12-year-old Archie Battersby, who suffered brain damage 3 months ago, are set for the latest battle to keep him alive. Holly Dance and Paul Battersby are hoping the High Court will rule he be kept on life support treatment. Doctors at the Royal London Hospital say they think Archie is brainstem dead and should be disconnected from a ventilator.
Travel news. A new study says flights from Birmingham Airport had the longest delays in the UK last year. Its researchers from the Civil Aviation Authority say planes were about 12.5 minutes late taking off. Southampton Airport had the second poorest record, followed then by Heathrow.
Up next, and it's on the front page of some of the papers today, and that is ambulance and A&E waiting times.
Yeah, we're going to be asking our GP, Dr. Sarakai, if we should be worried, and particularly how we should cope, because we've got a weather update for you next with the looming heat wave. Looking ahead to today's weather, the UK is going to be dry, sunny for many of us with blue skies and some hot sunshine. Let's take a look at the details. So at lunchtime in the southwest of the UK, there's going to be plenty of blue skies, hot sun. UV levels are going to be really high and temperatures are rising to the mid-20s. It's going to be hot and sunny across London and the southeast of England as we approach midday. Temperatures around 27 Celsius. There's going to be sunshine in abundance across Wales this lunchtime. Perhaps a little low cloud lapping onto north-facing coasts. Here will be about 24 degrees Celsius. In the Midlands, a hot and sunny day. Hardly a cloud in the sky with very high UV levels. Temperatures rising to around 27 Celsius by midday. Wind staying quite light. What about the northeast of England? Plenty of sunshine here, though it may turn quite hazy as high cloud moves in from the north. Feeling warm with temperatures around 26 degrees, a little bit cooler towards the coast. Across Scotland, lots of sunshine here as well. It's going to be quite hazy though. Winds will be nice and light with temperatures approaching the low 20s. In Northern Ireland, it's going to be dry and sunny heading towards lunchtime. Quite hazy here too with high cloud. That will move in from the west. Temperatures around 22 degrees at lunchtime. So across the UK, it's going to be dry, hot and sunny for most of us. Rain will arrive in the far northwest later.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know. The latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Welcome back. 26 minutes past 8. Still to come on breakfast here on GB News. We're going to be live and on your doorstep in Newmarket in Suffolk as our reporter there asks residents about the Conservative leadership race and how they're coping with the cost of living. That's just before 9 o'clock.
And then after 9 o'clock, he's having a say on all the runners for the Conservative leadership for the top job. Andrew Pearce from the Daily Mail will be here at about 9:20. So I just want to say, earlier on in the programme, I was talking to Rosie and I was saying to her how so many people put dog poo in bags and then throw it up on trees. And she said, surely not, Eamonn, surely not. But here, have a look at this. If you're of a weak disposition...
Is that how I speak, Eamonn?
Here is the dog poo bags on the tree here. And what is the point of that, Rosie?
I've been completely proven wrong. That is utterly... That looks like someone's done an alternative art exhibition and it's not like it's actually real.
Yeah. The thing is, of course, they get away with it while there are leaves on the trees, and then you hit autumn, winter, the leaves fall, and you're left with that nonsense. And my point is, if you do this, and we're talking about people, who on earth is it in real life that actually does that? You'd be just better leaving the dog poo on the grass so it can biodegrade than actually putting it up there on a tree for somebody. What, you're expecting somebody to take that down and bring it home because you can't be bothered?
But it seems to me, because sometimes you see the bags on the floor or hung up somewhere, and I always assume that someone's on a walk, they just didn't want to carry it, and they'll take it on their way home.
Yeah.
And then is that a tree of forgotten bags? Or people just think, I mean, that maybe they just need to put a bin right next to that tree?
No, I just think it's ignoramus people, really. I mean, and we're talking about this because there is a council in Nottinghamshire which is saying that if you don't have a bag when you're out walking your dog, they can fine you up to 100 quid, which I don't really see that as the problem. Because people would be embarrassed if they didn't have a bag, and dog community people are quite good at sharing such things. You know, you see someone else with a dog saying, "Very sorry, I've forgotten the bag. Do you have one by any chance?" And people are very good at sharing that sort of thing. But then there are just, you know, these cretins, ignoramuses who do that. It's really quite disturbing as to why anybody would do it. It's their mess for someone else to clear up. Anyway, give us your view. Tweet us at GB News, or you can email gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Well, let's look at some of the health stories that matter to you with Dr. Sarah Kite, who's in the studio with us. Thank you very much for joining us. We're going to talk about ambulance times in just a moment, but one thing lots of us will be doing while we're getting ready for the day is choosing what to wear. It's going to be really hot for lots of us, and there have actually been some health warnings. It sounds ridiculous, it sounds obvious, but just remind us of the absolute basics and essentials.
So, stay well hydrated. Stay out of the strong sun between the times of 11 and 3. If you can stay indoors, by all means do so, because the sun is strong. Keep good ventilation going. Wear light clothing. If you're starting to feel unwell, seek shade, seek help.
Yeah, because sunstroke's an awful thing.
It is awful. Sunstroke is, can really make you feel awful, but it can also be, life-threatening in extremis.
Yeah. I remember a holiday being ruined once where, the first day or whatever, you're just not taking into account, hits your head, your face, whatever, you're walking about, you're going to the shops, you're unpacking the car, whatever you're doing. It was just awful for me for about 3 days afterwards with that.
Yeah, exactly. It has a hangover effect in that way. And we've got to be especially careful with our young children and the elderly population as well.
And particularly schools winding down. Lots of schools have got their sports days on. I mean, it's a glorious day for it, but also more hazardous when it is this hot, if it's over 30 degrees.
Exactly. I think people need to be seeking shade at all times, really.
OK. Stories in front of the newspapers today. Ambulance in worst ever crisis. And what they're saying is basically that these ambulances are being used as beds. So you can't get an ambulance because the ambulance has a patient inside, and not only for 2 hours, 4 hours, 10 hours, we're talking about 27 hours, up to 27 hours, sitting parked outside a hospital.
I think this is just an example of how the NHS is suffering in all aspects, so not just general practice, not just A&E, but not just ambulances. It's falling apart at the seams in all aspects of it. But I suppose if you break it down, when we look at the times for life-threatening ambulance response times, which is what the most important is to most of us, the aims are for it to be 7 minutes response time. At its peak since the pandemic, it's been up to 9 minutes and 35 seconds. So it is longer than we would like, but we're not talking, 27 hours, those kind of things. But still, those extra 2 minutes in a life-threatening condition can mean, life or death.
Of course. The awful thing is that you look at it and you don't see an obvious answer, an obvious solution. So great is the problem.
It is. The Department of Health and Social Care have promised some funds to go towards NHS 111 to help improve call times and therefore allow people to know what is an emergency, what should be going to A&E and what can be managed elsewhere. Because ideally, a lot of these things that are going via ambulance to A&E probably don't need to be there. And we need better services to make sure that those people have been given the right education and told where else to go.
Let's talk about eczema, a new potential treatment.
So eczema for most people can be managed with steroid creams, moisturisers. Sometimes they need stronger medication like methotrexate, cyclosporin. But for a lot of people, either those things don't work or, they have bad side effects from it. So there's a group of 3 different medications that have now been approved by the NHS that will help modify the immune response and the inflammatory response to eczema.
Okay. Particularly for when it's really hot, for those people who've got eczema, it just can be, awful, scratchy clothes and...
Exactly. Sweating, all the sunscreen, chlorine, all of these kind of things can add to people's eczema. So certainly at this time of the year, it would be ideal to get it under control.
Obesity is a problem, but childhood obesity is a bigger problem.
Yeah, unfortunately, childhood obesity is on the increase, and there was a recent study showing that 50% of those in Year 6 in Tower Hamlets and were overweight and obese, which is
50%.
Which is a shocking statistic and really worrying, actually. And I think we know that obesity has been on the rise, over the last decade, but there's been this increase through the pandemic, possibly because people were less active, confined in their homes, eating more sugary food, more processed foods.
But here's the trend. More than half of children are overweight or obese by the time they start secondary school at 11. That's ghastly. South Tyneside, Tower Hamlets have more than 50% of Year 6 students classed as overweight or obese. The reason kids have parents is that parents are responsible for them and should be there to look after them. Is it an education problem right across, that the parents aren't educated, therefore the children aren't educated in the problems of this?
Obesity is multifactorial. It's not only going to be, diet, not only going to be exercise, not only going to be education, but we do know that there is a social divide. We know that those in the more deprived socioeconomic groups are at higher risk of obesity. So there is something there that we need to be focusing on. And I think, our main efforts need to go to bridge and close that gap in inequality when it comes to socioeconomic.
Well, thanks for your health update, Dr. Sarah. Really appreciate it. We'll leave it there. Thank you very much indeed.
Don't go anywhere. 25 minutes to 9. We're going to be going through the papers with Chris Agabusi and Emily Carver after this.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
8:37 is the time. The latest news stories are these.
11 candidates are now in the contest to replace Boris Johnson as Prime Minister. The Foreign Secretary Liz Truss announced she's entering the race for the Conservative Party leadership, pledging to reverse the national insurance hike and keep corporation tax competitive.
Only a third of new fathers are found to have taken paternity leave because the pay is so low. Just over 200,000 dads took paternity in the last year, compared to over 600,000 mothers. Statutory paternity pay has gone up by just £20 in the last 8 years, 157 quid a week.
A heat health alert, as we've just been hearing, has been issued for parts of the UK as temperatures are predicted to hit 33 degrees Celsius this week. Forecasters say the hot weather is likely to last the whole week and people are being asked to check on those vulnerable to extreme heat.
OK, time to go through the papers again for the last time this morning on this Monday. Olympian Chris Akabusian, columnist for the Conservative Home, Emily Carver. Very nice to see you both. Christopher, we begin with you. We tie into the political story, The Times, and they have a take that the next PM must appoint a team based on talent, not loyalty.
Yes, precisely, yeah. I mean, loyalty is good and very important, but not if they're not talented. You need talented performers. And basically the take that Claire Fogues takes is that Boris Johnson's administration was a car crash because he just paid, surrounded himself with people who are loyal. And whether this is true or not, she mentions Peter Patel, Gavin Williamson and Nadine Dorries. I'll let viewers make up their own mind. As opposed to people who he got rid of, like Rory Stewart, Ken Clarke and Oliver Litwin, who I mentioned earlier, who are much more heavyweight and great thinkers, strategists. I like the picture of Ruth Davidson. Now, a lot of the people that are in government at present have all of a sudden found out that Boris Johnson is liable to a few porkies every now and again. Ruth Davidson, who was the leader of the Scottish Conservative, she refused to serve in Boris Johnson's government because she was not happy with his integrity. She said straight from the get-go, I cannot serve this guy because I know he doesn't tell the truth. He's economical with actuality. So someone like her again is somebody who we miss now in politics. She's gone and she's having a great career in the media, etc., etc. But someone like Ruth Davidson, for example, would have been a great ally to have in government.
True, but I think it's a bit silly of Claire in The Times to say that Rory Stewart could have worked with Boris Johnson. Rory Stewart despises Boris Johnson. Have you heard him talk about him? And of course he went up against him as leader. I think you have to be realistic about who can and can't work together. So it can't just be that you pluck people from all sections of the party and they're harmoniously going to be able to work in a cabinet together. Rory Stewart would not have been able to work with Boris Johnson.
But I think the point that she makes well, though, is that a savvy CEO surrounds himself or herself with people in portfolios that are much better at that than they are themselves. If Boris Johnson is a great orator, people person, mingler, fantastic, then you need to have detail, organised people around you to ensure you don't stumble or fall.
True, well, one might say Gavin Williamson and Nadine Dorries didn't have that attribute. Don't.
If we were going to pick a list of attributes and if we say, OK, talent's more important than loyalty, Chris has mentioned integrity, what are the other things you actually need in your team if the Conservative Party is going to be able to say to the population at large, you can have confidence in us?
I think competence, being able to speak truth to power, as one says, which is a bit cheesy line, but being able to say, hang on a minute, this is wrong. Also, being able to manage civil servants, which is very difficult, I think. You've got huge teams working underneath you. And also to get to grips with your portfolio so quickly. One of the things that I find so strange about British politics is that ministers literally move from one department to the other, like that, in reshuffles.
Yes.
And suddenly they're supposed to know all about education policy or all about what's going on with taxes or all about what's going on with whatever. I understand that you wouldn't do that in any other job.
Yeah, no, I agree. It leads to them avoiding answers instead of just saying, look, I've only been appointed to this job for 2 days. I'm not across that yet. Ask me that again sometime. Instead, they'll come out with some, dodgy answer.
Yeah.
And,
a bit embarrassing.
I agree with you on that, Emily. We go into the Mirror, page 2 there. Starmer leads tax attack with schools revolution.
Yes, so the Mirror's giving us a little bit of an insight into how Starmer's going to react to all the different leadership candidates. He's going to say that tax cuts are essentially lies, fibs. You can't have all these spending pledges, which the leadership contenders are saying, and then at the same time cut taxes. He then bizarrely goes on to say that he's going to pay for catch-up classes by removing private schools' charity status, which they currently have. And to be honest, I think that's just sort of trying to get the Labour members on side who don't like private schools to begin with. Remember when Jeremy Corbyn was a contender, he was always going on about private schools and how, they either need to be axed or have their charity status removed. It seems a little bit of a low blow. But, I mean, he's talking about spending pledges that haven't been costed. He was backing Jeremy Corbyn to be Prime Minister, who was constantly talking about all the massive splurges, free broadband for everyone, free whatever else, free, absolutely everything. The list went on and on and on. I can't remember right now all the different spending pledges, but they were endless. So he was very happy to stand behind that manifesto. But now he's obviously slinging the same at the Conservative Party.
Well, we're going to hear a lot more from the Labour Party at 10 o'clock. Keir Starmer's laying out his sort of fresh vision for the country and for the party. Interesting question. It's something Eamonn and I were talking about. Who do you think the Labour Party want to be the leader of the Conservatives?
Oh, this is tough. I think there are some that they might fear. I think Kemi Badenoch and Penny Mordaunt, quite strident characters, which I'm not sure they'll know how to deal with. Who would they want? Perhaps Rishi Sunak, because he's so tarnished and because they can go after his wealth.
Yep.
And that appeals to...
And he's very fragile and brittle. He doesn't... If you attack him, he gets really bristly and doesn't like it, and sometimes even goes stum, will say nothing, just what answer the question. So I think he'll be great to have as a opposition. And I'm also thinking Mr. Hunt, because he's been around for a very long time, so he can be the old guy that never gets things done. So I think Mr. Hunt will be a good one to go up against. I think they can have some mileage against him.
Interesting. Let's talk about wildlife now. We go to The Guardian, and grey squirrels, of course, are not indigenous to the British Isles. Red squirrels were, but grey squirrels have taken over the territory of red squirrels.
And we've got black squirrels in Woburn as well.
Seriously?
We have black squirrels in Woburn, yeah.
Never seen a
black. They're exactly like the red squirrels.
Yes.
But black.
Gosh.
Yeah, exactly. So, and you can see the different, the grey squirrel was a rodent imported from America 1870. And then the red and the black squirrels, you can tell they're much more bushy and...
Chunky,
The grey squirrel's chunky.
Yeah.
So basically this story is that our scientists have come up with a way of putting the oral contraceptive in hazelnut feed and have created a contraption that recognises the weight of the grey squirrel so that they can go in and eat it and it doesn't affect all the other squirrels and all the other wildlife. And so they're not going to be wasting squirrels like shooting them at a turkey shoot. They're going to literally have them digest the oral contraceptive so that they can't proliferate.
Right, this is a theory. Is it going to be put into practice?
It's going to be put into practice now. Yeah, it's going to be put into practice. The innovative research has great potential to provide an effective, easily applied and non-lethal method for managing grey squirrel population. Yeah. So this article reads as if it's actually in the process of being delivered. And I love that idea. But the thing is, though, like...
You can't put squirrels on the pill.
Through lockdown...
Apparently you can.
But through
Who
lockdown...
did the research? Who's responsible for this?
Right. Oh, that's a lovely, great one.
Trick question.
That's not even a trick one. Gideon Henderson, the Chief Executive Scientific Advisor of the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs.
DEFRA.
OK,
wow.
so, yeah.
Right at the top.
Advisor. There
we go. Well, I mean, it is a real problem, the population of grey squirrels, and that could be argued to be a much more humane solution than some of the others that are suggested.
I mean, I haven't noticed the problem of our grey squirrel population. What are they a menace?
Oh, they are. So I was going to say, through lockdown, I got into feeding the birds, and the grey squirrels, they're funny actually. When you watch it, the ingenuity,
incredible acrobatics.
Oh, amazing athleticism and agility, and they don't give up. And no matter what you do, they will get in there. So they are amazing, and they're so protective.
I've got a tip for you. So squirrels will get around anything, but if you've got bird feeders in your garden, you can try and put an upside-down bucket underneath the bird feeder. Did you try that? And then it's too slippery a surface and they can't really get back up to get
Right, so I've now got these domes over the bird feeder. So yeah, you get them with their hind legs hanging, excuse me, but their hind legs are hanging like that, and then their bodies are over the dome, but they still can't get to the bird feeder.
The problem is you want the garden to look nice with birds. You don't really want these big plastic
Precisely.
domes.
Well, yeah, but they're transparent, so it doesn't look too bad, and at least you see the lovely. I mean, I've got beautiful goldfinches came on the weekend. It was just beautiful seeing them hanging on there, I think. And the squirrels have gone.
Wow.
They vacated my premises because they can't get to the food.
This enthusiasm.
It's
I've never seen anything like it. I need to spend some more time in the wildlife.
Or you get a dog, and then you have fewer squirrels.
They ruin the lawn as well. They bury their nuts.
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely.
Okay. Very sad story here, front page of the Sun, and this is about the reality star Lauren Goodger.
Yes, Lauren Goodger. I don't know if many of your viewers are the only way is Essex fans.
Yeah.
She was one of the main characters for a long time in that, and she had quite a tumultuous love life. Everything seemed to go wrong for her. She was hurt very badly, and it seems she's been hurt very badly again through no fault of her own. Her little baby was born and then sadly passed away within a couple of days. We don't know exactly what happened. She hasn't come out with what has happened, but she has spoken a little bit about her grief and that she will always have love for this perfect baby. It's very sad indeed, because she was actually a very sweet character. And she had a lot of grief on the show and also through social media, a lot of bullying, etc., etc. So hopefully everyone on social media will give her a little bit of peace at the moment and just send nice well wishes, because this must be one of the most traumatic things you can go through.
Yeah, she said, words can't describe, as a mother, losing your baby that I carried for all these months perfectly and gave birth to, my angel to be taken from me. Very devastating words, and I'm sure will resonate with many people, maybe even you watching at home. But it is encouraging if they can speak about things like this and then lose some of the stigma associated. Because often in a situation like this, if you're a friend or a family member, you don't even know what to say, because it's almost too difficult. The grief is too great.
What do you say? I mean, it's impossible to try and console. All you can do is be there, I imagine. But they've put in this Sun, they've put a little notice about getting in touch with the Lullaby Trust, which apparently is a helpline for people who are dealing with this kind of thing.
I would say from experience, because Monica and myself, when we lost twins and they were 6 months old, today they'll survive, but they were too young back in the day. The most important is not to talk about it. So, we went through a pregnancy, we had the babies. Clearly, Monica was pregnant at the time, and then all of a sudden she's not, but there's no babies. So if you're friends, don't not talk about it, because, of course, you want to talk about your babies, and then we can tell you, because in the end, I mean, you do come to terms with it, and we can tell you about the day and about the babies and what they look like and that they were real people. So I would say, if you're friends of people who lose babies, don't not talk about it.
OK, Chris, yeah,
Really
I'm sure that resonates with lots of people. Chris Akabusi, thank you very much indeed. Emily Carver, thank you very much indeed for your analysis of the papers on this Monday morning. 9 minutes now before 9.
Let's bring you up to date with what else is making headlines today. And over 4 million UK households have resorted to buying lower quality food to cope with the cost of living. Well, Financial Fairness Trust report that an additional 1.5 million households have stayed in financial difficulty since October of last year. Well, the data also shows soaring inflation has hit lower and middle income families the hardest.
More than half of you worry about dangerously long waits for emergency treatment if you fall ill. Around 60% of people surveyed don't believe an ambulance would arrive quickly enough if they needed emergency treatment, with nearly 2/3 thinking they'd have to wait to be seen in A&E.
Unions are calling on the government to dump plans that would replace strikers with agency workers. The TUC says the new laws will threaten public safety and make it harder for workers to defend their jobs. The plans are in response to a 3-day strike last month, you'll remember it well, where thousands of workers walked off the job.
We are going to go outside, hopefully into the sunshine, because it is time for On Your Doorstep.
Ed Crawford is out and about in the horse racing town of Newmarket for us. Ed, very good morning. Earlier we were talking about how businesses have been struggling. Just tell us a little bit more.
Well, that is true. I'm in the equestrian epicentre of East Anglia, Newmarket. Now, Newmarket is a very sought-after place to live, but just like other parts of the country, independent businesses are facing more and more challenges with the cost of living crisis. So that's why I thought I would come to the Gray's Kitchen in Newmarket, which is a brand new restaurant. It's open this week, and I thought that would be the perfect opportunity to speak to the owner and find out what are some of the challenges he's facing. So come on, follow me through. Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Could you introduce yourself to the camera, sir?
Absolutely. My name's Silas, and I'm the owner of the Gray's Kitchen in Newmarket.
So, Silas, this is a brand new business, I understand.
Yes,
You've only just opened.
We've just opened, yes.
What are some of the challenges you think you are facing at the moment?
I think the quite obvious one, Ed, is the whole pinch. Cost of ingredients, which have increased. Obviously, it's a brand new business for us. We've got that to kind of expect. But me being me, I've done a little bit of investigating, talked to some of the locals, and they've all sort of told me the rise in the prices for gas, electric, and also ingredients as well, whether locally sourced or sourced from Europe.
Now, you mentioned ingredients. Now, let's come on over here and let's have a look at one of your platters. So, ingredient-wise, what have we got here? Can you explain some of this for us?
Absolutely. So all of our ingredients come directly from Italy and Spain. So here we've got some lovely charcuterie and cheese. We've got pecorino, which is a hard cheese. We've got some lovely pancetta, mortadella, salami, Milano, Napoli. We have Indua sausage, and it's all directly sourced from Italy.
So with all this fresh ingredients coming from around the world,
yes.
Are you finding it difficult in terms of importing, or are there going to be challenges going forwards?
I mean, hopefully there's not too many challenges. We'll wait and see. But yeah, in terms of importing, speaking to my supplier, he has a regular shipment from Europe twice a week, and I know he's seen the difficulty in terms of both prices and importing, especially since the whole changes with coming out of the EU as well. So, yeah.
Well, it's challenging times, and it's challenging times for any independent business right now.
Yeah.
But actually, at the Gray's Kitchen, you're offering quite a unique service, and you're offering food that you don't normally see nowadays, especially on Newmarket High Street. So it's quite unique. Are you confident that with the coming storm and the rising energy prices, are you confident that you're going to get through this winter okay?
Well, I mean, we'll see, but I'm confident. I'm a confident guy. We do offer something unique, something different here. We bring lots of source ingredients from Europe onto the table, onto one board. Like I said, we offer something different. I'm confident we'll smash it this winter. In terms of the rise in energy prices, that's new for us. We'll see, but you know, we'll take the hit. We want our customers to have consistency. We're not going to change. Obviously, I feel the pinch maybe in my pocket, but you know, our customers are what's important to us.
That's what we like to hear on Breakfast TV. A bit of confidence, a bit of strength. Well, I know they're fed up with me talking about food back in the studio, but I'm sorry. We're gonna hand back to the studio, and we're gonna have some of this spicy. What? Pardon me. What was it again?
It's called the Indua sausage. So I'm just hoping that you're a fan of spice, Ed. Otherwise, you might get a little sweat on.
Right, well, I won't eat this on camera in case I turn red, but have a great day in the studio, Yvonne.
Did you see any horses, Ed, while you were there?
Unfortunately, there's not too many horses around the high street, but as you're driving into Newmarket, it's very common to see the horses being exercised early in the morning. If anyone ever gets the chance, it's always worth popping down to Newmarket races and to Newmarket in general. It's a really unique town.
Oh, yes. I wish we had the time to pop down. I wouldn't mind a day at the races today. That'd be very good, or sometime. Ed, thanks very much indeed. Appreciate it.
Right,
my pleasure.
Coming up to 9 o'clock, don't go anywhere. Andrew Pearce will be joining us, and we'll be finding out who he believes of the 11 candidates that have already put their hat into the ring, who could be the top Tory. That's after the weather.
Looking ahead today's weather, the UK is going to be dry, sunny for many of us with blue skies and some hot sunshine. Let's take a look at the details. So at lunchtime in the southwest of the UK, there's going to be plenty of blue skies, hot sun. UV levels are going to be really high and temperatures are rising to the mid-20s. It's going to be hot and sunny across London and the southeast of England as we approach midday. Temperatures around 27 Celsius. There's going to be sunshine in abundance across Wales this lunchtime. Perhaps a little low cloud lapping onto north-facing coasts. Here will be about 24 degrees Celsius. In the Midlands, a hot and sunny day. Hardly a cloud in the sky with very high UV levels. Temperatures rising to around 27 Celsius by midday. Wind staying quite light. What about the northeast of England? Plenty of sunshine here, though it may turn quite hazy as high cloud moves in from the north. Feeling warm with temperatures around 26 degrees, a little bit cooler towards the coast. Across Scotland, lots of sunshine here as well. It's going to be quite hazy though. Winds will be nice and light with temperatures approaching the low 20s. In Northern Ireland, it's going to be dry and sunny heading towards lunchtime. Quite hazy here too with high cloud. That will move in from the west. Temperatures around 22 degrees at lunchtime. So across the UK, it's going to be dry, hot and sunny for most of us. Rain will arrive in the far northwest later.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know. The latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
The Foreign Secretary joins the race for Conservative leadership.
Hello there, very good morning to you just after 9 o'clock on this Monday, the 11th of July. Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn Holmes and Rosie Wright.
Well, here's what's leading the news this morning. The Foreign Secretary, Liz Truss, has joined now 10 other candidates in the race to become the next Conservative leader and then Prime Minister. She launched her bid with a promise to cut taxes from day one.
The former Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, has denied claims that he is in contact with Dominic Cummings after the former number 10 advisor launched a series of attacks on Tory leadership candidates. We'll get the latest on that from the consultant editor of the Daily Mail, Andrew Pearce, in about 10 minutes' time.
And Novak Djokovic has beaten Australia's Nick Kyrgios to win his 4th consecutive men's singles title. Post-match, Kyrgios hailed his opponent as a tennis god.
And thank you for joining in the discussions throughout the programme this morning. You've been very good at getting your points in and getting them across, which we've tried to reflect on the programme. You email or you tweet at GB News.
So to our top story, the Foreign Secretary Liz Truss has entered the race to become the next Prime Minister.
She enters a field that now includes 11 candidates, including the former Health Secretary, Jeremy Hunt, the Transport Secretary, Grant Shapps, and her chief rival, the former Chancellor, Rishi Sunak.
Well, she launched her bid, writing in the Telegraph newspaper that it was time to get back to Conservative values, and she's promised to cut taxes from day one.
Now, earlier on...
I think you have to think about any parliamentary party. Every MP is elected from a constituency base, and they all think that they would like to be Prime Minister and have the capabilities. So it's not like a business where you're constructing a team and everyone's going into it and there's a single objective. There's always going to be a degree to which people think, well, you know, I could have a shot at that. So I wouldn't root this in a particular individual or a particular set of time. I think what you're seeing right now is recognition that we are electing within the membership a Prime Minister, and that's a big step. And therefore, and for many, there will be a personal element of also it's a big prize, but they're wanting to get it right. And so I think that's going to create huge pressure, and that's why you see it at quite this intensity, because essentially it's 2 weeks. We have the rules out today, and then we'll have a couple of rounds this week, and then a couple of rounds next week. But by Thursday of next week, they'll have selected 2 candidates to go to the membership. So that's why you're seeing this intense fighting, because what they want to do is say, I need to make it through each round. So I'll do whatever I can to show what I stand for and who's backing me and those kind of things.
You started this interview by saying your role was going to Prime Ministers and say, I've identified these problems, we've got to solve them. What are the biggest problems now for whoever the candidates are?
I'll break this down in 2 ways. One, in terms of the biggest problems in terms that they might raise in terms of the membership, in terms of getting elected, and then secondly, in terms of the country. If we're focusing on the country, it's cost of living, it's housing, it's thinking about how we get on top with the economy, productivity, tackle inflation. Or if you're looking at the membership and you see actually some different issues coming forward, it's thinking about what are your Conservative values? How can members think about, or MPs, think about how you will come at a problem. What are the premises by which you assess an issue?
Well, you were listening there to the former Director of Legislative Affairs at Number 10, and she is Nikki Da Costa.
Yeah, it was an absolutely fascinating insight into sort of the workings of the minds of previous Prime Ministers that she'd worked with, Theresa May, Boris Johnson, and clearly they had very different approaches.
Yeah, Theresa May being into fine detail, Boris Johnson not so much. Anyway, still controversy right across the country surrounding the circumstances of Mr Johnson's dramatic resignation last week.
Our reporter Will Hollis has been speaking to people in Lincolnshire about it.
When the weather gets warm, Brits head to one place. In Sutton-on-Sea, on Lincolnshire's coastline, the summer getaway is starting. But there's one question that can't be escaped, and that's who might become Britain's next Prime Minister.
I think we need somebody that keeps us in Brexit, rather than these anti-Brexit people getting in.
I would like to see Sunak in the job. I think he's very confident, make a good confident leader.
I don't think I trust anybody, to be honest.
Without the backbiting, without the infighting, let's just hear what each one stands for.
There's plenty with leadership in sight, like Jeremy Hunt, Suella Braverman, and the former Health Secretary Sajid Javid, who was one of the first to jump from Boris's sinking ship.
Actually, I watched his speech, his resignation speech, and I thought it was really good. And I thought from that, I liked him. Yeah, better than the others. And I seem to know more about him, I think, than the rest.
A mile down the beach in Mablethorpe, and there's still one name on many people's lips. The wound of Boris Johnson's removal remains raw for coastal Conservatives here. Their communities have enjoyed tens of millions in levelling up cash, and they felt that Boris Johnson was the way to rebuild Britain's softening seaside.
Well, I think it's been a bit of a sad week, really, for Boris, because he has done a good job. He got us through the pandemic, through Brexit, and now the Ukraine thing, so it has been a bit sad.
He was well liked round here, that we did do, a few mistakes, as you would say, with him, drinking and all the rest of it at parties and wherever you say. But yeah, he'll be sadly missed.
It's not good, is it? It's thrown everything into turmoil again, hasn't it? Everybody's just starting to kind of worry about bills coming in and the economy, and all of a sudden this is happening as well. You don't need it, do you?
But Britain's problems now lie beyond Boris Johnson. By the end of summer, a new Prime Minister will lead the Tory party and the country, but the effect of Boris Johnson, for good or bad, won't easily wash away. Will Hollis for GB News in the East Midlands.
Now, we've been running a poll this morning to hear who you think should be the next Conservative leader and PM.
And we want to know the issues that matter the most. Cost of living, inflation, is it taxes? Have your say by heading over to our Twitter page at GB News.
Penny Mordaunt still leading the pack, according to you. She's currently the Minister of State for Trade Policy. Also, cost of living is the issue that seems to matter most. So, as Rosie said, just record your views on Twitter and you can have your say there. But final results will bring you at the end of the programme after we talk to Andrew Pearce.
And if you want a bit of a laugh, if you're going on social media this morning, just to nod to something about an hour ago, you could go on to Eamonn's Instagram as well and see a sort of a tennis... tennis legend or a tennis wannabe in the making?
Pin-up, I think the word was.
A pin-up, yes. So if you need a laugh at 9:10.
A bit of a laugh. a bit of a laugh. I'd like to see some pictures of you at 20, and then we'll see. We'll compare them. Have we got the picture there now that she started? Do we have the picture?
The directors can maybe bring it to you before the end of the programme.
Go to my Instagram, at Eamonn Holmes. It's there for a bit of a laugh. We're going to bring you a bit of nostalgia now.
Yes.
And about a genius, a musical genius. 6 years since the legendary singer George Michael passed away in North London. And during his career, he sold over 120 million records right around the world. 7 number ones in the UK and 8 number ones in America.
Well, a new film called George Michael, Freedom Uncut, has been released in cinemas, which the singer was working on before he died. Let's have a quick look.
I can't really explain how overwhelming that kind of hysteria can be. I remember thinking, I really don't know if I'll ever do this again.
Check this out then. Modern day Elvis.
Ladies and gentlemen, George Michael!
He was the biggest pop star in the world.
And all I wanted at that time was success.
It changed the whole face of how videos were done.
It's the Mona Lisa.
George Michael is arrested in a public toilet.
When he came out, I wanted to go, George, don't make a song and dance about it. And he did.
Well, that's the film. We're now going to talk about a book. And this book is George Michael, A Life, by the man beside me now, James Gavin. And that book came out last week, and that book has already just flown off the shelves, or whatever they fly off these days. A tribute to you, and also, James, obviously a tribute to how much this man was respected and loved right around the world.
Thank you, Eamon. There is not a country in the world where he is not loved, and my book is going to be published all over the world. Isn't that nice?
Did he love himself?
No.
Why?
He didn't, because it all goes back to childhood. Don't all of our issues point back to our childhood and our relationships with our parents? And he felt that he was homely. He felt that he was awkward. He knew that he was talented. And by the age of 7, he had set his sights not on becoming a musician, but on becoming a superstar. And he made it there.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? I mean, so that was the priority. It's not, he knew he had the talent, but he had to have the image.
And he created, first of all, with Wham and Andrew Ridgeley, he saw in Andrew, who was a schoolmate of his, a template for what he wanted to be. Cool, confident, self-assured, looking great, knew how to put a look together. And Andrew Ridgeley became the model for what George Michael became in Wham. And then George left Wham after the group had conquered the world. And 2 years later, he was on arena stages all over the world as this George Michael doll, this super macho biker dude that he knew was a lie. And as he stood on these stages everywhere, he felt like a major fraud.
Really?
How did you work that out?
How did I work out the psychology of it?
Yeah.
Through George's own words, because George said in his many words that during this phenomenally successful tour, which was the #1 grossing tour in the world in 1988, that he was miserable. And it's interesting that he spent the first half of his life creating George Michael and the second half of his life destroying George Michael.
When did he come out as gay? And was he comfortable with being gay?
I would say he came out in air quotes because in April of 1998, that incident took place that everyone knows, in which he was arrested after having stepped out of a men's room in Beverly Hills. He didn't come out, he didn't make the decision consciously to come out. He made it subconsciously to come out.
But could I say to you, why would he not consciously? How could you imagine anybody having a problem with George being gay?
He was terrified for all sorts of reasons. The 90s were a very different time. George, first of all, had created this worldwide success that he thought might be seriously endangered if he told the truth. His audiences up until that time were screaming girls. He was also intimidated by his Greek Cypriot immigrant, very
religious,
strong and Orthodox Greek background. And also, his mom had died in 1997, and that sent him emotionally spiraling out of control.
So to what depths, when you say spiraling out of control, what were the demons that took over? I mean, was it just his mental health, or was there more to it than that?
It was drugs. Drugs entered his life in the mid-90s after he had lost the love of his life, this beautiful Brazilian man named Anselmo Falepa, who had died of AIDS a year and a half after they met. And then 4 years later, his mother, beloved mother, died prematurely of cancer. That was 1997. And George, at that point, felt that he had lost the two bedrocks of his life.
You've delved into his story in such detail. What about that sort of narrative was a bit more clear to you on that research? What surprised you?
What surprised me is the depths to which this beautiful, physically beautiful, universally loved, wealthy superstar could not bear to see what he saw in the mirror. It's quite sad.
Seriously?
When you think. Yeah.
I mean, so you would look at him, he had the image, he had the looks. I mean, I've seen pictures with him, with a bit of pimples on his face or something like that. But I mean, he saw himself as grotesque, did he?
Again, it harked back to his childhood because that's how he felt when he was growing up, and he never got over that.
Where will he rank in terms of, the music legends? He died at 53. I mean, Elvis was 42 when you look at those situations. How will he be regarded in the music world?
I can best answer that question by saying that any time from the beginning of this project, I signed to do it in May of 2017, he had died in December, any time to this day that I mention the name George Michael to people, I see a wash of warmth come over their faces, and they smile. From any people from any country, just the mention of that name brings a rush of good feelings in people. They hear his voice inside their heads. They think of a song of his that has beautiful associations for them. And everyone says, oh, I love George Michael.
How would you describe his music?
His music was real pop. He cast his net wide because he wanted to appeal to millions of people. It was not rock and roll. George didn't really like rock and roll. He wanted to be a pop star, and he had mastered the mechanics of putting a catchy pop song together that would brand itself on people's brains and that they would never forget. And he
Club
was right.
Tropicana.
Yes, indeed. Freedom 90. Praying for Time, a sadder one. Faith, absolutely. Father Figure. All of these songs are indelible in the worldwide consciousness.
The warmth that you've spoken about other people, witnessing in other people, is definitely evident in you. So do you think you've grown to be more fond of this man in writing about his story?
I discovered so much about the humanity of this guy. This guy was in trouble. He was suffering. And when we look upon someone who is that eminent and that wealthy, it's hard to feel any sympathy for what's going on underneath. But George was in a lot of pain, a lot of conflict, and one of the ways that he expressed his big heart was philanthropy. As you know, he gave away millions of pounds to friends in need, to strangers in need, to organizations that he cared about, and he did it silently. He wasn't doing it to take bows.
And he died on Christmas Day, what, 6 years ago?
Yes, 5.5, so we are told. He did.
Dear, dear, dear. James, absolutely amazing. That's James Gavin there, and his book, George Michael, A Life, came out last week. And it's well worth a read, obviously, and it's simultaneous with this new film, George Michael, Freedom Uncut, which he was working on before his death there 5.5 years ago, which is also... James, lovely meeting you. Thank you very much.
Joy to be with you both. Thank you for this.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Right, don't go anywhere. It's 18 minutes past 9. We're going to go through the day's top stories. There is political stories abound with Andrew Pearce after this.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know. The latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
OK, Andrew Pearce now, just rounding up, stuff that was being printed over the weekend, everything that's been going on from the end of last week, and going through the newspapers and whatever. Where do you want to begin, Andrew?
Yeah.
Good question.
The mess that is the Tory leadership contest, so many candidates, they will have to be whittled down to 2 by a week on Thursday. So it's going to be a brutal process. After the first vote, I think, will be on Wednesday or Thursday. If they haven't got 36 supporters, they're out.
Doesn't it amaze you that some of them think they've even got a chance?
Grant Shapps, the Transport Secretary, has no chance of becoming the next Tory leader.
Yeah, so why put himself out forward?
Why they do it, it's because if they get a few more votes perhaps than people think, that may ensure they keep a cabinet job.
Well, yeah, they're thinking about what their job will be. If it's not Prime Minister, they still want a top job.
They do.
OK, this morning, the Daily Telegraph, Truss vows I would cut taxes from day one. A big piece of editorial there. She's putting forward her hat into the ring. She may do well.
I think she will. And to be fair to her too, when the Chancellor announced that he was going into the Cabinet, he was going to raise national insurance, she was the loudest voice objecting to it. She said, don't raise taxes, because that's what it is, it's a tax increase. She said, find other ways to do it. Cut public spending, borrow more. The Chancellor bit back very hard. The Chancellor was then Sunak. She's got a very strong chance. She models herself on Mrs Thatcher. We've even had photographs of her aloft the tank with the Cossack hat. But she isn't Mrs Thatcher, let me tell you.
Yeah, there's that, I don't forget who came out with that fantastic quote, "Sir, I knew John Kennedy and you know John Kennedy."
That's right, that's right. That was in one of the presidential elections in America. But soon you can't write off Rishi Sunak. Now, my paper today is pointing out there's a lot of people think he's been working closely with Dominic Cummings. Remember him? Boris Johnson's main advisor, the man who drove all the way up to Barnard Castle, the beauty spot. Then he drove his family to Durham. Then he drove to Barnard Castle beauty spot to test his eyesight, see if he was capable of driving back to London. You and I would have gone to Specsavers. He drove his car to a beauty spot. He gave that long, dragged-out press conference in the Rose Garden at Downers.
But if it is true, somebody was working with Cummings, and it wouldn't necessarily surprise any of us with this, it just shows that Cummings eventually had his revenge.
He's got his revenge because Boris is out. And that's what he wanted, and he was working from the day he left that front door back Downing Street with that box of tricks. I pointed out in the Mail the next day, there will be a dozen smoking guns in that box because he kept hitting Boris, didn't he, again and again, and he's attacked just about every Tory leadership contender, bar one. Sunak.
We have to say that Sunak's supporters, Robert Jenrick, came on the programme earlier and denied the claims. But
he denies that the former Chancellor has spoken to Dominic Cummings. What about the former Chancellor's campaign team? Are any of those in contact with him?
That's one of the big questions, because people looking at that video produced by Rishi Sunak think, you didn't whip this up in 48 hours.
No, he did not. Glossy, very professional. I think he's almost too glossy, actually. Too perfect, too bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. Well, it doesn't feel enough like he's
I'll tell you, we ran this poll throughout the programme this morning for 3.5 hours, and he polled 12%.
That's interesting.
Off the audience there. By 1.5 miles in the lead was?
Penny Mordaunt?
Correct. 61%.
She looks good. She's got good background. She's got a compelling backstory. She brought up her twin brother herself because she lost a parent. My worry about Penny Mordaunt, when she was Equalities Minister last year in the Commons, she wanted to enshrine in law the phrase pregnant people. No, they're pregnant women. And that's how it stayed. So some people think she's being captured by the woke brigade. Her twin brother, who she's incredibly close to, campaigns very hard on trans issues and thinks the Tory party is vile on trans issues. I don't think the Tory party is vile on trans issues. I just think they put it in the right perspective. It is not the most important issue in this Tory leadership contest, is it? By a long way.
But when we look at the rest of the figures in that poll, I'll just summarise this. You can have a look at these generally, just flick through those. But two names stand out, neither of whom I'd heard of before. Kemi Badenoch, on nearly 50% of the vote, and Suella Braverman, 37% of the vote, and the rest are just sort of also rands.
Suella Braverman is the Attorney General. She's doing a lot better than I expected. And Kemi Badenoch, I think she knows she won't win this time. She's thinking about a leadership campaign and the time after, perhaps. She's the MP in Saffron Walden. She's incredibly clever, and she's got the backing of the cleverest man in the Tory Parliamentary Party, Michael Gove.
If you were to pick from the 11 that have declared so far, tough ask, where's your hunch? Who's your money on?
I think the last two will probably be Truss and Sunak, but Sunak might implode. If the Cummings thing sticks, that's a problem for him, in which case I'd put Zahawi in there. Nadim Zahawi, the Chancellor. I've got money on him. I put money on him at 33-1 quite a long time ago. He's now about 9-1. He's good, he's clever, and he's
said that he's taken just 4% of our vote. 4%.
But of course it's the MPs he needs in the first instance, and he has said if he gets through to the next stage, he's going to publish his tax affairs because there's all these smears about him, because he's a very rich, successful man, founded the business YouGov, made an awful lot of money out of that. So I think that's quite clever, because if he publishes his tax returns, they'll all have to.
Wouldn't that be interesting?
Yeah, as long as I don't have to.
Andrew Pearce, thank you very much indeed. Lovely talking to you, Andrew. Wish it was longer. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you also to Rosie. Isabel should be back tomorrow. We'll see you from 6 a.m.
Tom Harwood will be next with the briefing, and I'll keep you up to date with the news across the day.
Bye-bye.
Looking ahead to today's weather, the UK is going to be dry, sunny for many of us with blue skies and some hot sunshine. Let's take a look at the details. So at lunchtime in the southwest of the UK, there's going to be plenty of blue skies, hot sun. UV levels are going to be really high and temperatures are rising to the mid-20s. It's going to be hot and sunny across London and the southeast of England as we approach midday. Temperatures around 27 Celsius. There's going to be sunshine in abundance across Wales this lunchtime. Perhaps a little low cloud lapping onto north-facing coasts. Here will be about 24 degrees Celsius. In the Midlands, a hot and sunny day. Hardly a cloud in the sky with very high UV levels. Temperatures rising to around 27 Celsius by midday. Wind staying quite light. What about the northeast of England? Plenty of sunshine here, though it may turn quite hazy as high cloud moves in from the north. Feeling warm with temperatures around 26 degrees, a little bit cooler towards the coast. Across Scotland, lots of sunshine here as well. It's going to be quite hazy though. Winds will be nice and light with temperatures approaching the low 20s. In Northern Ireland, it's going to be dry and sunny heading towards lunchtime. Quite hazy here too with high cloud. That will move in from the west. Temperatures around 22 degrees at lunchtime. So across the UK,